Call this meeting to order. Today's Tuesday, September 7th. Bill was here. We're going to call the meeting to order as soon as commissioners get here, or a short one.
Must have been from another meeting.
Okay.
Well, he's here.
Where did he go?
Did you know the other one would be late? Did you know the other one would be late?
All right, we're going to call our meeting to order. And today is Tuesday, September 7th, 2 o'clock. I'm going to ask Vice Chair Commissioner Bill Pickens to do our invocation and Commissioner Terry Turner to do our Pledge of Allegiance. All rise if you're able to do so.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, is this on? Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this glorious day, Father God, and all the blessings in it, Father God. Just guide us today as commissioners and staff, and let us do the best we can for the citizens as we discuss these serious topics, Father God. We just ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Pickens and Commissioner Turner. We appreciate that very much. Next on our agenda is I think, Sam, you're going to do a American Rescue Plan Act discussion with us.
Yes, sir. I'm also going to have a presentation that I've prepared for you. Give me a second here to bring it up. I've already shared this presentation with you. There's been some updates since, and I'll go through it, and if you have any questions during the process, please let me know. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The American Rescue Plan was passed on March 11th, 2021 up in D.C., and it was signed into law, giving $1.9 trillion for different activities for small communities to recover from COVID-19 impacts. The areas of funding that are eligible are public health, negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, infrastructure, revenue replacement, and administrative. And I will go over those categories briefly as we go through it. For example, the public health eligible expenses are listed here. If you see either 2 or 1 asterisk next to it, there are conditions, additional conditions attached to those types of expenses. First off, under public health, of course, there's all kinds of COVID-19 related issues such as vaccination, testing, contact tracing, preventive measures and protective equipment, mental health services, substance use services, and other public health services. Negative economic impacts can include a variety of different areas, such as household assistance, unemployment benefits, job training assistance, contributions to unemployment insurance, small business assistance, profits, notably tourism, travel, and hospitality industries as well. Services to disproportionately impacted communities include education assistance, healthy childhood environments, housing support, social determination of health. These are generally areas leading to residents or individuals who fall under certain economic groups, such as low and moderate income families. Premium pay is something that was added in there for first responders and other responders, as well as private sectors who were considered like essential services. If, you know, people get additional pay for their time while they're working on the COVID, either as, you know, say sanitation workers or first responders who were dealing in the front lines with the pandemic. Infrastructure has got three categories: clean water, drinking water, and broadband. The water expenses would have to fall in line with the clean water and drinking water standards set by the EPA. Broadband is mostly last mile projects, studies, and providing broadband to underserved or unserved businesses or residents. Revenue replacement, I don't believe that is something that we are very eligible for. There's a calculation to be made. I don't have all the numbers yet that would show what the official calculation would be. One thing that we could do, instead of looking at revenue replacement, the number, if you have a lost revenue calculation, you could use some ARPA money to up to that amount towards regular programs of the government programs. Administrative expenses, that's basically if you hire consultants, other agencies to assist with the disbursement and the study of spending this ARPA money. A lot of the, certain of the programs, eligible expenses, require certain factors. This is, one of them is the use of evidence parameters. Basically, certain programs, if you have to either use an evidence-based intervention program or go through a whole set of studies, which are highlighted here in white, which would define whether your program is eligible or not. Similarly, some of them have to be based on a demographic distribution. Most notably, they have to be in a qualified census tract. As you can see on the map, please disregard the two purple zones on the bottom. The two top purple zones are the two qualified census tracts in Putnam County. In those areas, additional programs are eligible, such as, for example, the parks. There's a big part of the ARPA money can go into encouraging outdoor social distancing, clean air, and those programs are only eligible in qualified census tracts, which would be those two areas there. Additional consideration, these are ones that stuck out of the hundreds of pages of legalese that the Treasury Department has released on ARPA. They're very, regarding any kind of assistance, whether it be individual or business, they have very stringent requirements regarding documentation and proof. For example, on the business assistance side, you would not only have to show how the aid is, where the aid is going towards a COVID-related matter, but then you would have to keep receipts and documentation showing that the money was spent on that and only that. On the individuals, you have to show that they were an impacted community. You have to show the impact and all that. They've kind of taken a step further from where it was on the CARES Act previously. For example, in terms of households also, if low moderate income households do not need to show impact, they are presumed to have been impacted because of their financial status. There's a lot of clauses out there. I put some of the ones that most notable ones, but there are considerable amount of regulations that are attached with spending our ARPA money. As you can see, I have 2 pages. Broadband, for example, you have to bring it up to the 130 or 100 in terms of upload and download. And even though all funds have to be incurred beginning on March 3rd, 2021, that does not apply to residential ones. If we decide to do a residential assistance, It can have happened before March 3rd, 2021. We just kind of incurred it before then, which we haven't because we haven't spent any money yet. But we could go that far back if we so choose. All right. We got some requests from the staff and members of the community and put them in here by categories as based on eligible expenses. These are just what people have brought up to the attention as possible expenditures. This is not a recommendation, it's just a demonstration. Under public health requests, we have $20.9 million worth of requests. I'd like to note at this time, any of these requests you see in these categories, if they're italicized, we are still vetting them. They have not been completely vetted. Now, under the communication system, a lot of the information has just gone to us, but we're quite confident that all of it will be vetted. I just want to bring that out there. It's still in italics, but I just want to let you know that we're pretty confident that that will be fully vetted by the day's end. As you can see, fire rescue is asking for some ambulances and fire engines and quick response squads, and the fire station on the west end. All of those are eligible expenses. Scuba replacement units, that's still being vetted and it's not looking positive at this time. Shining Light has brought up a pair service program, which we could share with you through email. It's several pages, and that would come up to $132,000. The tax collector has brought up a point of sale locker, kind of like what you have at Amazon, at like a Whole Foods or something. You call in, say like your new driver's license, they print it, they put it in the locker, you have a code to come and get it out of the locker. It avoids face-to-face contact, so they can provide services through the pandemic that is an eligible expense. SMA has brought up a couple of projects. They have been vetted as fully eligible. As you can see, they come up to about $6.5 million. And the school board, I just received this. I just scanned over it. I haven't had a chance. They have a program at the school, which would be run around $500,000. Services disproportionate to impacted communities. This comes down to the open air, which we discussed earlier in the qualified census tracts. Parks and Recreation has some projects that they could do for a total of $1.7 million, which would renovate a lot of our parks and those triangle parks, South Putnam Sports Complex and Floral Home. The details could be provided if necessary. Infrastructure requests, these are water and broadband and Wi-Fi requests. They come up to a total of $12.25 million. As you can see, there's some upgrades to county network and county Wi-Fi. These fall under the cyber security clause in broadband, which is an eligible expense. We have some water projects, water line expansions that Public Works could do to provide clean drinking water to further residents. And the solid sanitation department has a leachment treatment facility, which is an eligible expense, which they have proposed. And that is about it on infrastructure. And do you all have any questions for me at this time?
Mr. Turner, I'll let you go first.
Couple of them, you said that the broadband was only for last mile projects, not for middle mile, because the middle mile we have around here now is obsolete.
Well, we could look into that, but the clear direction is they favor last mile projects.
Okay, well, you can't run last mile if you don't have a middle mile.
Correct.
And it was my understanding that if the USDA owned the middle mile around here, but when we started looking into it 2 years ago, they deemed the equipment to be obsolete at that time, even though we couldn't find out what department in the USDA actually owned it, and that was after looking pretty hard for a year. So if you don't have an end mile, there's no need, I mean, a middle mile, there's no need in having an end mile. I know we have first mile users, that's Comcast, whoever. But then we have middle mile, which is what we had set up at one time around here, and the only end mile user we had was the one down in South Putnam, and it didn't work out. So now I understand none of that equipment's working on the middle mile anymore. So I don't know that it'd make any difference to go in mile uses if you don't have the whole system. How many of these requests, as usual, we get $7 million and have 20 million in requests? That's what happens every time we find additional money. But how much of this would be reoccurring? In other words, if we did some of these projects, it seems to me like they would be reoccurring expenses, such as some of the programs for, I saw one on here that struck me straight up, was the, anyhow, it was the emergency one. The, maybe it was the, give me just a second. The quick response squads, for instance. The quick response squads would be something, if you started them up, they'd go on forever, correct?
No, that's just a piece of equipment. It's like, I'm sure JR, if he's here, yeah, he could explain what the vehicle is.
It's all right, JR.
It's
So
just-
it's just a piece of equipment you need to help in your job. It's
Right.
not like a squad that goes on
Right.
and on and on.
Correct. It's a small response vehicle.
Okay. All right, good, because that's the last thing we want to do with any of this money is spend it on recurring expenses. If we decide to go forward and the commission decides to go the route that we pick projects or we do whatever, and that's what we're gonna earmark or spend the ARPA money on, would we need a consultant to help us through this, like we got a consultant for the CARES Act? But that was a lot more involved, giving out hundreds of loans or what have you. Do we need a consultant to make this work, or do we have the staff necessary to spend 14 million in 2 years?
I think it's gonna depend on the direction of the board. If the board directs us to, complete some of these larger capital projects, there is likely not going to be the need on our side of the house for a consultant to keep us compliant within the ARPA funding. However, if we start getting into tiny projects, or any side of public assistance aid, we're gonna have to have a consultant, and the clerk also may need a consultant in order to make sure we can stay compliant because of the restrictions and requirements related.
Well, one of my concerns is that, Sam mentioned to me in a previous meeting to this, that we had a time frame on a lot of these projects, that a bunch of them are 2 years and a few of them are categorized into a 4-year project, such as water, sewer, and broadband. I think everything else is kind of, not everything, but kind of most everything else is in a 2-year time frame. If we don't, I would hate to earmark money for a certain thing out of the ARPA funds and then turn around and not be able to meet that deadline because we didn't have the staff to administer the program fast enough. So that's the only reason I'm asking about the consultant. If we take on too big of a bite of this apple and then we can't do it, we lose the money and we don't ever get the project either.
I think that we're not gonna be able to answer that well for you until we know what the board's appetite and direction is. If it's buying ambulances and fire trucks, then obviously that's something we can do in-house. The more complicated the project under ARPA gets, the more complicated the restrictions under eligibility gets, and then it becomes a different story.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think I'll yield the floor for now. I've got some more comments, but I think I'll wait till other commissioners have their say.
Yeah, Mr. Adamsack, thank you, Mr. Stern.
I guess just for questions for you, I guess my main one would be, when you mentioned the LMI, what is it, do we have the thresholds? And if you don't have them today, could you get them to me, like what I'm assuming there's some financial household threshold or?
There's a set number provided by the federal government on the HUD site. I don't have it off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I can email it to the commission.
That would be great. That's my only question right now.
All right, and I have a couple. You said that the communities that are impacted, and you showed us a map of 2 areas. Can you go back to that map? Because it appears that it's on the other side of Crescent Lake, and I don't know if it would take into that, in our park down in that area. I could be wrong. I was trying to look at the map as you were going. I can't tell down there.
That
And
was,
then
that's like
I
a
know
com-
Flora
Can I
Home.
assist in that question as well? That's related to the Parks and Recreation facilities, Commissioner, I believe that you're discussing. And the park doesn't necessarily have to be in that highlighted census tract. The programs or services where the primary intended beneficiaries live within that census
Okay.
tract. So although the park may be partially or entirely in that tract, as long as we can show that our South Putnam sports facility is attracting, as, you know, our primary beneficiaries are those in that tract, that would qualify. Remember, we're still at we're at ground
know,
level
I know.
0. So obviously, all of that information is subject to be vetted and changed.
Good. And one of the things you mentioned, studies. I think it's important on broadband. So let me get back to that real quick, and that's my task with the association. But mapping is a big thing that we need to do this year. As Commissioner Turner just alluded to, we might be deficit in the middle mile and the last mile. But we don't know that until we know what we don't know. So, but you said we could use these funds for mapping capabilities and
Yes.
studies that we need to do that.
Yes, if you look, if we go back to that list there on the infrastructure projects, you will see, nope, sorry.
I think
going
it
too
was the one
fast.
yeah, that's okay. Yes, that one.
You will see that we have a countywide broadband mapping estimated at $75,000, third from the bottom. That's one of the
Okay.
proposed projects.
Yep, I was just
And that
making
would
sure.
be to contract a consultant to do the study.
Well, the reason I say that it's important, a lot of counties have already done their mapping. A lot of counties have already started laying fiber. Not a lot, some. We hear that DEO is going to have Department of Economic Opportunity, going to have $1.2 million for their mapping requirements that the legislators are putting on them, but it's not going to drill down into Putnam County that far. So they're just going to be looking at the state, as a whole, and we're going to have to look at our county individually. So that's,
How
that,
long would that take, do you think, the mapping portion? Is that a not too long, a year or two?
no, that's a few months
Few
study.
months once
Yeah,
you get it started?
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
very long.
If that was a route the commission wanted to do, it would probably be prudent to do it early on in this ARPA expenditure, so you still have a window of opportunity to do some infrastructure,
Well,
follow-up infrastructure
I don't want to just
projects.
beat that drum to death because I'm serve on that, but I think what we learned during COVID is we learned that broadband is an essential part of doing life anymore, not just business, it's just doing life.
It's not-
Telehealth,
It's not
Yeah.
just that, though. I mean, we've been working on broadband
Yeah.
for 3 years around here. It's one of the first projects I jumped on when I got here as
Sure.
commissioner.
that's
So,
right.
It's just you run a little bit, you hit a wall, and
That's
then
right.
you got to wait till the wall gets a little shorter where you can jump over it.
Jump over the wall. Well, I just, but it's also economic development. It's a lot of things to a lot of different people, and some of it's just recreation to some. But it's important to everybody. Mr. Adams, that you have your light on?
Yeah, I guess, when you were talking about broadband, what were the speeds? You said at 100 down and 30 up, or was it 100?
They really would prefer 100, but in certain conditions, more rural areas like ours, for one, 130 is acceptable.
I mean, because even where we have better service, 130 isn't that common here to begin with. So even if we're talking about last mile or mid-mile, our primary is, we have some that, but it's a very small percentage. So I don't know that we would qualify for that part of it, maybe the assessment. But as far as for getting more connectivity, I think it'd be very hard to achieve 130 with the infrastructure that's here. And I think we'd be better off to expand our 50-20 throughout the county before we worry about getting a few people 130, if that makes sense. The other question I had is, as far as the water plant or drinking water expansions, are we able to to maybe target more areas? Like, could we partner with a township like Welaka or Interlochen to expand their water lines into the county per se is a combined project, understanding that they get some money on their own as well, especially with the growth that we're anticipating with the BOCC area is going to spill out into the county side. And also, and I do support, this is one area where I think Mr. Turner and I may be in alignment. I do think growing our water lines is where we're going to get our more bang for our buck between water and sewer as far as becoming solvent. But we also maybe could reach some other geographies that don't have access to any of that by expanding on those systems where we know there's growth coming in Wielaka and West Putnam. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to touch
I guess that's a question. Can we partner with these municipalities to expand their water facilities? I mean, I guess there's an option to shift money to them, but I mean, really, we'd be looking to expand it into the county area outside of the cities.
From my understanding of my readings, and we're talking about expanding clean drinking water to the community, my answer would be yes.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I would like to double check it.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Well, I totally agree with Mr. Adams' act that we need to expand that base. We do need to do some sewer because, even though the capacity of our sewer plant is less than 50, we need to get it up to around 70 and still have some expansion room left. So there are some easy places to expand sewer while we're expanding water all at the same time. So I think it needs to be some sewer and mostly water, like you said. I think that's a very good idea that we try and partner with some different municipalities to expand their water system. The problem is, like I said earlier, we got 20 million in requests and $7 million. So I think that in this instance, we need to try to expand our own and get it working first. I think most of the municipalities actually break even or make money on their systems. We're not yet. So before I could support giving money to make their system more profitable, I would have to support making our system profitable to start with. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Mr. Pickens, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had was if you could partner like they're talking about with the municipalities, but also we have a unique situation. We have some private plants too.
Hang on a minute.
Would you be able to?
Rick, will you turn Mr. Pickens up a little bit?
Would you be able to, the possibility of partnering with a private supplier of water and sewage such as East River Park and West River Park? I mean,
Private partnerships are permissible. Similar to Commissioner Adams' question, I would like to double check on it, but at this time I believe that yes, we could do that.
I've had requests over the last couple of years to try to get water and sewage to some areas along the river, especially the sewage, and it's just, finding the money to do that. So, okay, thank you.
Jacob, his light is on, so his microphone. Let me go back to real quick, Sam, if you don't mind, broadband. I understand Commissioner Adams' concern about different speeds, but through the National Association of Counties, and it appears that maybe Florida is going to adopt their strategic plan on broadband to a certain extent. They're going to push the industry to be 100 combined. And that might be a very lofty goal, but I think it's, in some cases, it could be doable in some areas of our county, and maybe not in all areas of our county. But if we don't push that industry to do it, I don't think we're ever going to be, they'll be fine with 50 down 20. They'll be fine with lower. We need better than that. And I want to go back to something Commissioner Turner said, and I'm in direct support of furthering our water and sewer. But one thing that NACO has said when we talk about broadband is a one dig policy. Bury everything in the ground at one time. Water, sewer, broadband, so we don't have to go dig it all back up and start over again. If we know we're going to run fiber, put it in the ground. Put it in the ground at the same time we're putting, or within close proximity. I'm not saying the same hole, but it could be right next to each other. And I think that's important. That would save us money and be able to expand our facilities even better. But I do want to call on the Honorable Matt Reynolds. Matt, I want you to explain kind of what you had to go through to sign up to get all this $14.4 million over the next 4 years into Putnam County. And it's quite cumbersome. And I want you to address the question of what a consultant, because you and I have had this talk of what it would look like, you know, if we drill down too low or if we raise high, so.
Yeah, absolutely. The process was pretty extensive to get identification proven for the Department of Treasury. You know, had to go through video chat with a representative and show multiple different IDs and that sort of thing. So, but when it comes to actual administration of the program itself with all of the expenditures, it's like what Mrs. Young mentioned. It just depends on really how, what the list of projects are that the board is really going to look at doing, and what, how extensive the work is going to be into going into each of those projects. If we're just buying equipment, like we've previously discussed, that's relatively simple and straightforward. But if we start getting into some of these different projects where it depends on whether it's in a qualified census tract or whether we're having to track and document and prove LMI figures, which is, that's what we typically see in like CDBG grants. There's an extensive amount of backup documentation and other information that has to be gathered for CDBG type grants. So whenever I hear LMI and different qualified census tracts, that kind of makes me think that if we start looking at doing any of those types of projects, it would probably be a very good thing to bring on board a consultant that has experience in working with those types of CDBG grants or HUD grants, because they're in and out with that data day in and day out. That's what they work with, so that's kind of their forte.
Yeah. And you know, there is a reason you had to show your ID and your social security number, and I wasn't about to do that. You know, you're the comptroller, the clerk of the court, and our sixth commissioner, if you will. So by statute, and it's, I guarantee you, someone's feet are going to be held to the fire on this one.
Yeah, that's right. And when you say sixth commissioner, I'll say that I'm not going to have any say over the project that you guys pick. The only thing that I'm concerned with is the guidelines of the program itself, and ensuring that whatever that project may be, is it fits very clearly, black and white, within the guidelines that we're given for the ARPA money, so that we don't run the risk of potentially having to make up any amounts that were not qualified within the program. So that's the only aspect of it that I'll have, is I just want to make sure that we're very good when it comes to being able to comply with the guidelines of the program.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
So I guess, how do we open this up now to the community for comment, and as far as getting out there? I know other counties have been doing workshops and things like that in evening times out in the community. What is our plan as far as that, or what's the next step? What do you recommend as the next step for us as a commission? Do we pick from this list? Do we go out and pursue possibly more input? Because this is very limited as far as community input. There's some key players in special interests, but there isn't much as far as community input goes. And I know that there was an ask that came before us from one of the not-for-profits that's not on the list. So that's, did we vet that? I guess it was was it food? That doesn't qualify, or Epicure didn't qualify, or, I mean, just because that is one that we know asked. I mean, they asked right here from the dais. So I'm just curious.
Actually, it's still being vetted. It should have been
Okay.
on the list. That's my mistake.
Okay,
And
no-
they
no
were,
problem.
and they were invited to be here today to offer any further information that I met with them last week.
That was just one that stood out because they actually came here and not, I just thought maybe they didn't meet the vetting. So, I mean, I guess obviously it's up to us what our next steps are, but any recommendation from what you're seeing other counties do, from what you're seeing and what you read, how we move forward?
Yes, sir. Public input is, even though it's not made a requirement, it's basically listed as a requirement. Suggestions would be possibly holding an evening workshop, say in South Putnam, one out in Western Putnam, and maybe even a third one here,
Right.
and get input from the community to help the commission make their decision.
That was
And-
going to be what I was going to mention, is doing one in the west end, south end here, and then have a wrap-up meeting to close, you know, what
I
the
like that
commissioners
idea.
got the input and where we go from here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's very important when we go through this process to let the community know as we go through that we got $7 million this year. We got $28.5 million in requests
Right.
to date. So we're already 21 million short sitting in this meeting today of the requests that have been made on the money. So, you know, we can have meetings and we can expand the list to 45 million and we want. It's not gonna change the fact we got $7 million. That doesn't mean we get 7 million plus more. So, you know, I think I have no problem having all the meetings y'all want all over the county. That's fine. But we need to let everybody know right up front, we're already short on the amount. So, I realize that things are very important. I realize that, that it's important, mental health, Epicure, the other ones are all very important. But are they more important than having a communication system? We've been working on that for 4 years now, before I ever came around here. We're never gonna get it done. They're just about to quit altogether. Do we wanna kill off 20 or 25 deputy sheriffs and emergency personnel, while we're trying to help the food bank? I mean, we've got to have a list of priorities here. We wish we could fund everybody, but keeping our law enforcement and our emergency people safe are more important. They need to be at the top of the list. So, you know, I didn't know if it was too early to say this. If it is, you let me know and I'll stop. But, you know, I think communications finally needs to be at the top of this list. We can't crack that nut. We've tried for 4 years. We can't do it. I think that they're a little heavy in here on their $8 million request. I truly do, because I think that when we were able to hook on to St. Johns County's towers, I believe that number's gonna come down. And I also believe that some radios have been purchased that we were planning on originally in the 8 million. It may have gone up a little bit because the last 4 years things have gone up in cost. But I think, this commissioner speaking, I believe that we need to earmark $3 million of this $7 million right off the get-go towards that communications. They're calling for 8 million. I believe we need to earmark 3 million. We've got another $1 million that we've been carrying forward in the Better Place plan for 2 years now, trying to do this, but it's just not enough money to get started, knowing the fact that'll get the process rolling. And then once we get real numbers of today's world on what it'll cost to do this project, then we're more than likely gonna need some of next year's money to finish this project up. But that 3 million plus the million we have in Better Place set aside for, or already earmarked in Better Place, that would get us started to get accurate numbers. So I don't ever see us tackling this otherwise. We've looked for federal money, state money. We've looked at every grant program we could. We even looked at the CARES Act before. And this is the only shot I see at us trying to get this done. We either need to borrow the money and get it done, or we need to just go on and do it through this way. I don't know of any other of the two ways. That and sewer expansion and the broadband mapping, or whatever it takes to get us moving to where we're prepared, where when next year's ARPA money comes through, we can take that money, because broadband has got to be one of the biggest issues in Putnam County. I'd love to have 100. I don't know that we'll ever get there. I don't know that I have that on East End Road in San Mateo, and I'm on Comcast cable, and I don't know that I have 100. So I don't want to set my sights so high that they're irrational. But if everybody could have what I have at my office, I think everybody'd be tickled to death with that. So, and it's nowhere near 100. So. And I think another thing that needs to be called out in this conversation is what you never let us forget, that I totally agree with, which is it doesn't need to just be available. It already is. It needs to be affordable. You can get stuff right now, satellite and all that kind of stuff. If you've got the $4,000 for the equipment and the the $400 a month that it'll take to run all that equipment, you can get it right now. Maybe not that fast, but you can get it. But is that rational? No, that's not rational. So it needs to be affordable along with this while we're moving forward. So those would be my three top picks as of this point, would be that communications tower, trying to get the water expansion done, and water and as much sewer as we could put in the one dig policy as we could. And then the other one would be try to get the broadband mapping done and get ready for next year to be able to come back with that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Adams, that you were next?
So the unique thing about ARPA and the CARES Act was it allowed uses outside of just infrastructure and things like that. And it even recommended in some ways, and reading through some of this, to use it for community-based things. And then if you need the money and you've done your community-based things, then to start doing infrastructure. So I think on CARES, we got it partially right, and I wasn't part of that. But on CARES, it was partially done right, and then some of it we kind of used for infrastructure. So there's a little bit of balance there. I think on this, we need to have some balance as well. So I do think we need some community-based projects, and there are some here, but they're very specific, where we need to be able to find a way to get funds out into our community, because people are hurting, and that's still the case today. And this new ramp up of COVID, no matter how you feel about it politically or whatever else, there are people hurting. There are people who have left our community as a result of it in a way that no one wants to see someone leave our community. And we want to put a stop to some of that as much as we can, and we also want to help those people that are left behind. And a lot of families have suffered, and we need to find a way to at least get out there and listen to what they have to say about how this could potentially help them. And that's the purpose of getting out to the community, to see where we can help. And some of this money needs to go to help the community. As far as broadband goes, and I didn't want to, because this really isn't a question for you. Even if you take the primary example of Starlink, which is the one that the Association of Counties nationally and statewide is pushing, their advertised upload speed is 13.89 megabits per second. I've joined several user groups since we started talking about this in January. The highest they've gotten is 35 on upload, and that's in testing with basically no users. And there has been some tests in Florida that have hit 28.2. Even that, which is the advertised standard for what people are trying, and what most of the 1.7 trillion nationwide went to, was Starlink. A very small portion in our county is only 3-point-something million over 10 years. Only half of that went to Starlink, half went to a local provider. But neither of those providers that initial money went to do 100/30. And Starlink will probably never be capable of doing that when they're saturated, because it's a satellite uplink. The difference between upload and download is, the reason they can get 100 megabits download is because they can preemptively think about what they think is coming with the package of data. When you're uploading, that's completely random from your desktop or your machine of what you're putting up. There's no way that they can get onto your machine and make assumptions through caching or otherwise on what you're going to upload next. So it's unachievable unless we have a hardwired system with gigabit and things like that people can connect into, and that's not going to happen here in the next 10 to 20 years. So let's just...
Thank you. Mr. Pickens?
Yeah, with this, never thought you'd get this much money and have twice the amount of requests, but that's just the way it is, you know. So, but I think a list of priorities of what we really feel will best serve the citizens of Putnam County. And when they presented the amount of money and the plan and stuff like that, first thing I thought about was the communication system, because I don't know if we're going to get there any other way. So that was the first one. Broadband, I mean, we all get questions about broadband every day, about when is it coming and all that type of thing. So that's important too. Now, however we get to the point where we have our priorities, I think we should have some public meetings. I don't think we need 10, but probably one in each area of the county. And then will we come back and get together as a commission and staff and start putting the top priorities together? Is that what we're looking at?
I am. Yes,
Okay.
sir. That's my proposal, yeah. All right, and let me close out. I don't want everybody to think that I'm sold on 100 broadband and all that, but I do think we need to push the industry. That's all I'm saying. And if the best we can get is whatever we can get, that's the best we can get. But let's push the industry to see if we can't get at least something that's decent for our area. And let me tell you why I say that. I was in business in Interlaken for 28 years. I kept constantly getting, do you want faster internet? No new lines were ever run to my office. They were just turning the speeds up at the local substation. That's where I'm saying we can push the industry to provide better service. That's all I'm saying, whatever the industry looks like at that time. And I do agree, disagree just a little bit. I think we should take $3.5 million out of our funds, leave our other $1 million alone for resurfacing, but we'll have that conversation. We'll go 3.5, and I'm fine with that. We get to
You're
7
not
million.
gonna get an argument from me out of that one. I mean, I just think that needs to be our number one priority,
Well,
that's all.
you know, when you talk public safety, and you hear when you brought the deputy who couldn't even speak in Rolling Hills over here because the communication was so bad, and he's trying to get help to a call that his life's in danger, I can guarantee you where this commissioner is going to go on number one, because Commissioner Turner's right. We have had a hard time cracking that nut. And this 14.4 million over so many years, right now 7.2, that'll go a long way to protecting the lives of our first responders and our deputy sheriffs and our policemen that are out there depending on that call. And I'm going to be making a speech, matter of fact, this Saturday, 9/11 ceremony, about just that page, and how much that's important to us and to them at the same time. I'm not preaching to you, I'm sorry. It touches me deeply. It really does, because I heard that poor gentleman calling, begging for help, and the people could barely hear him. I don't want that ever again. If we have a way to solve it, we solve the problem. I got on my soapbox. I'm sorry, Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
I share that soapbox with you, Mr. Chairman. It is heart-wrenching whenever you have a deputy or emergency responder that can't reach help, and they're out there on their own. You know, we've known about this for a while, and we haven't been able to fix it. We just haven't. We have that opportunity. I'm with you. That's got to be number one. It's just, in my book, it's just got to be. The 3.5 would be fine. I have no problem with that. I think it's easy to lose sight of the fact that it's not just for first responders. It touches all citizens. Good communications touch all citizens. And it's not just that. If we could figure out a way to expand, even if it was wireless expansion of the broadband or something, do something to make sure that people in the county have better service. I guess the industry is expanding to the 5G, and I know this is your expertise a lot more than mine, Commissioner Adams-Act, but, you know, I remember back in 1993 or whatever it was when you had a cell phone that was big as a suitcase, and the only way in Plaquemine would work was on top of the bridge or the Publix parking lot, because I had one. So it's come a long way since then, and I'm sure we're going to have some more. But if we could do some things to make this step forward and help people in the outer areas of the county instead of just on top of the bridge or in the Publix parking lot, then it would bode well for the whole community, everybody. I think in today's world, the internet and broadband strikes just about everybody's life at some point every single day.
That's right.
So, you know, I'm okay with that, but please, we need to remember, we also need to not forget about our water and sewer. We just don't. I mean, this is another one of those times we're just not gonna get the opportunity again to fix some of these things. And rather it be that we expand existing profitable systems or try to make existing systems sustainable, whatever we decide to do, I just would wish that we wouldn't forget about that if we went too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Adams-Act?
Yeah, I guess to finish up, with the point I was trying to make before and I sidetracked myself. The reason why it's unique to ARPA and it was to the CARES is because it's in response to COVID. We also have a political, however you feel about politics nationally, we have a political atmosphere where there is going to be huge infrastructure bills coming. Some are already written and they're gonna get passed. And you're talking about trillions of dollars, which is gonna be more of this type money, except for that money is going to be specific for infrastructure with no opportunity to help people on the street. So there is a difference between the money that's coming and the money that's in front of us now in this conversation. We don't know what that looks like yet today. I understand that's scary. But the writing is on the wall for those other type of things to be coming. It's being talked about by everyone. When Bobby Payne and Keith Perry were here, that is what they led with. That is what Bobby stated as the first thing he said, was this money is coming. There's other means of infrastructure money coming. Start making your list of how we can help, because it's coming to your county, it's coming to every county, it's coming to every state in this country. So we have an opportunity with ARPA to do things that maybe are outside of infrastructure a little bit, because that other funding is coming. So that is why I think we need to look into some non-infrastructure type things with a portion of the ARPA money, just like you did with CARES. And I think we need to do a good job of vetting that. Now, if there is nothing good that's put before us as a result of going out and asking, then obviously we prioritize some of these things. The only reason I bring up the bandwidth thing is because it's a requirement of the thing that it's 100, 100, or 130. So I just think it's probably a disqualifier at this point in time in 2021 in Putnam County, outside of maybe the assessment, to be part of what we go after with this particular funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
So you think, I don't have a forte in that, so I'm gonna ask you a question. That's what you do for a living. So the 130, which is a minimum that we would have to achieve in order to get it paid for with this money?
That would, if we're
Over the whole
doing,
county, or just in the area that we actually put this in? Because we've already got decent speeds in the certain areas of the county right now. So if you set up a wireless tower in a certain area that that maybe was government-owned, and it still would be a fee-based, but it wouldn't be as fee-based as what it would, normally would be, what, it has to reach 130? Because like I said, I don't get that on cable and at my office, I don't think.
anything that we construct in terms of broadband has to meet that standard, yes.
Okay, but may I
That's
answer something?
possible?
Well, I'm going to answer that.
Okay.
You know, I would have said 6 months ago, not possible, not going to happen. But the industry is stepping up because they see this money's there too, and they don't want to lose this money or future money that might be coming. So I think all things are possible. And I really do believe the industry is going to step up and provide better service for our children to do their schoolwork, our people to do telemedicine. I think it's going to be, I think we should hold the bar there, but before we do anything, we got to know what we don't know. And what we don't know is what we don't know about mapping and broadband right now.
Does it count? Does it count if we, like, say AT&T or Verizon or one of them people that do this for real? Would it count if we partnered with them and build them a certain tower or whatever, as long as they told us that they would not charge too much money to spread it out into the community? Does that count, or can you partner with somebody like that with the
Yes,
money?
you can. They're floating around for that reason right now. So, but again, there's benchmarks for them to hit. So, and if they're willing to hit it and provide to the consumer, and they can prove they provided, it's a win-win for everybody at that point. So, you good, Mr. Turner?
For now, yes.
I'm going to break from the tradition of waiting for public comment. After the next item, we're going to go ahead and take public comment on the ARPA funds right now real quick. So if you'd like to, I'm not going to require you to fill out a blue card and all that. Just come up, state your name and address. We're going to give you about 3 minutes, if you don't mind, to kind of state your need. And Sam, we appreciate you coming up and
One item I forgot to bring up during my presentation is there is a time constraint attached with these monies. All monies have to be expended within a 2-year period. Even some projects may take up to can have up to 4 years. Those are the water projects and the broadband projects. Everything else has to be completed in 2 years. that is something to take into consideration, especially if you look at towards doing a large project like, say, communication, which could probably take 18 to 24 months to complete. I want to bring that to your attention. Also, on the last slide of my presentation are links to Treasury documentation if you want to read up on details.
Okay. So
Yes.
when we know what we want to do, then we can start whittling them down pretty quick at that point.
That was one of my biggest concerns, and that's why I was bringing it up earlier. If we drag around too long on this and we miss the window, we don't get any money and we don't get any projects either.
All right, good.
Thank you.
And I want to say something, not to you. There is more money, Commissioner Amzak is right, there's going to be infrastructure bills that come down. There's opioid settlement money that's going to be flooding into Florida. What does that mean to Putnam County? I don't know. I tended to put pencil to paper the other day and try to figure out how much I wanted per person, but there's going to be a lot of money coming. So let me just say this, if for some reason your project doesn't get funded or can't get right now, then let's keep looking at future pots of money that are coming. But we're going to open the podium up. If anybody wants to come up, just y'all stand in line, just jump up and come on, first come, first serve, and let's make this amongst friends. And all right?
I'll come up.
Yeah.
I'm not shy.
Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Lori Slavin. Address is 106 Roberts Boulevard, Satsuma, Florida. And I'm also the executive director of Lee Conley House. So I'm not sure why Sam didn't have my request on his list, but I did have a request. I have a couple of things. Number one, I have a building that was renovated several years back that sometime during COVID, we were using that as our COVID isolation house, and there is a pipe burst underneath. Maybe the reason Sam didn't have that is because I don't have a quote to fix it, because in order to get a quote, I'm going to have the floor torn up, and I can't pay for that. I'm, a nonprofit like many others, so and other than that, as we all know, I've done no fundraising. So I'm also in need of support for, I have federal funding. Federal funding requires a 25% match. I have had no fundraising in 2 years, which my board member, Joe Wells, can attest to. And we have had very limited donations. I don't blame people, number one, because you could go out tomorrow and you want to hold on to your money for your family if you get sick or your family member gets sick. So I don't blame people for not donating as they have in the past. But I have a $105,000 shortfall due to having no fundraisers. This doesn't just affect me and the women and children that we serve. We serve about 500 survivors of domestic violence a year, with an additional 200 plus in-school prevention students. However, prior to Lee Conley House having an actual shelter here, our law enforcement and hospital, it was their responsibility to transport survivors of domestic violence to other counties. So if I have to close my doors because I can't make match, then it falls back on law enforcement and they're already stressed and strained and stretched, and so is the hospital. But it falls back on those two entities to take care of the domestic violence survivors in Putnam County. So all of our people are considered homeless. We are a nonprofit, and all of our people are low income because most of them come to us with nothing. So I am requesting support in $100,000 to fix the problem in my back house, and as a small portion of the what we've lost due to not being able to fundraise, and that will be for a 2-year period. So it would be $100,000 total. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for me? I can ramble all day.
No, we're good. Thank you very much. Okay, who's next?
Hi, I'm Diane Scott. I'm the Executive Director of Shining Light Peer Services. Our address is 3701 Crow Avenue. And I submitted a request for proposal for the ARPA funds, and I really appreciate all of you guys allowing us to be here today. I guess my big thing is I would beg of you, honestly beg of you to consider allowing some of this money to go back into the community to help the citizens of Putnam County. So our organization serves individuals and families that struggle with substance use and mental health challenges. So we offer peer support services, so we offer a non-clinical approach to recovery support services. We've obviously seen a huge increase in overdoses and mental health challenges as well. So the proposal that I sent in would help us to expand peer services in Putnam County. So it would provide training for individuals that are in recovery to become peer specialists and to start employing them more in the community. We would also use the money to hire 2 new peers, where we would place one in Interlochen and also one in Crescent City, so that people have quick access to recovery support services all throughout the county. Our office right now is in Palatka, and that's where most of our participants come in. And also, one of the struggles that we're having right now is transportation. I don't have to preach on the transportation issue here in Putnam County. So we'd like to purchase a van where we can get participants back and forth to probation, back and forth to doctor's appointments, back and forth to SMA for whatever clinical services they may need there. We have several participants right now that are currently in violation of probation because they can't get back and forth to their probation officers. So I have submitted to Sam my request for proposal, and I guess my big ask would be to please just give us an opportunity to start helping the citizens of Putnam County with mental health and substance use challenges. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Don't be shy, just run up here.
Nervous but not shy. Hi, I'm Sunny Mulford, and my address is 468 High Tide Drive in St. Augustine. So I guess one of the only comments that I want to make is that, you know, if people don't have food, they don't care about internet or connectivity. So, you know, it's one of the basic needs. And, you know, we're, as you guys know, a 100% volunteer organization, and we're a group of community members that are here to help our other community members, you know, providing food for free to people in need without qualification. And that's one of the things I love about our program, is that there's no qualification. It's zero threshold. If you show up, you get food. So they don't have to go through, you know, all of the hoops that people normally have to jump through to get services. And so I want to change our proposal. I know it's not in the list, but I can give you it. But I know before I asked that we get $850,000 to purchase the building. But rather than asking for that for you guys to purchase for us, I would say that how about if you buy that, then it becomes a county asset, so that you never have to worry about us going away and you not having that building. So we would definitely be, you know, interested in doing that if possible. But you know, the rent, $6,250 a month, is a big nut to crack when you're a nonprofit. You know, it's very difficult to raise money in this day and age with COVID. So, you know, not only are we at risk of the landlord selling the building if he wants to, but of possibly not being able to survive. And right now we're currently serving over 700 families every week in Putnam County. So, and we're expanding that now in Pomona Park. So just, that's all I wanted to say, is if you can consider that. Do you want the new proposal with the $850 that?
Just give it to Sam.
Give it to Sam.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
My name is John Chapman. I live at 107 Myrtlewood Point Road in East Palatka. I'm also pastor of Pilgrim Congregational Church in Pomona Park. I'm here to speak in favor of the Epicure request, and I'm going to give you a little history. I'll make it brief, but first of all, I am 100% behind improving communications for first responders for the sheriff's office. I've been on the end of that mic asking where the ambulance is and can't talk to anybody, so I understand that completely. I'm not going to even go towards that. But when you talk about your first responders, I'm retired as a chief of Station 10 not long ago, and I was one of the county fire rescue chaplains. When COVID broke out in 2020, I started getting phone calls from firefighters all over the county wanting to know if I had any line on food, because most of them, anyone who knows the pay of a firefighter in Putnam County, most of them have other jobs, and volunteers, of course, have other jobs completely, and they couldn't feed their families. So I started reaching out, and I mean, I'm literally looking into every nook and cranny, and somebody told me that I needed to call this outfit called Epicure over in St. Augustine. So I went over and met Sonny face to face. They weren't in Putnam County in those days. And I told her my dilemma, and she gave me enough food to feed, over the time, of probably about 30, 40 families of firefighters. And that food was all they had for a while, from other sources as well. But I was impressed with the fact that we have an organization that wasn't even in Putnam County willing to help Putnam County residents and especially our first responders. So a couple of weeks ago, actually about a month ago, I was going to approach Bill about, Commissioner Bill Pickens, and about the fact that we have a severe food shortage on the south end, and what can we do about it? Well, Sonny was in front of the commission that day speaking, and I spoke to her, and she instantly said, "You want to be one of our remote sites?" I said, "Yes." So I showed up with our church bus, seats folded up, air conditioners cranked down, and she loaded me down with enough food to feed 50 families. And it was gone. We just did our 4th week, and I'm out of food now for 60 families within 45 minutes. The need is here, the demand is here. And as she said, it's hard to concentrate on anything when you're hungry. And yeah, we give food out to people that really don't need it sometimes, that happens. But I'd rather give food out to people that don't need it and be sure and catch the ones who do. Now, I know money's tight, and I know that you've got to spend that money where you can spend it. But food shortage, hunger, being hungry, you can call it any politically correct name you want, it hurts. And when a parent can't feed their child, they get desperate, and desperate people do desperate measures. Just keep in the back of your mind, we've got to keep Epicure going, because it's not just the 600 families, it's my 60 families, it's other families as well. So any help would be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
So this goes back to me explaining that the difference between ARPA funds and the future infrastructure stuff that's coming. We have the opportunity to do some of this work, whether it ends up being Epicure or SMA or Shining Light or any of these whatever organizations ends up being the ones. If we don't figure, there is a cost savings to the county, to our EMS, to our fire, when people are in a better place holistically, whether it's they overcome addiction or mental health or abuse or hunger, they're going to call in less often. There's going to be less pressure on our system when we can start lifting up all boats in this county. And if we don't figure out a way to do this, and it's not being done, we're unsuccessful in it. And usually government doesn't play a major role in that. Usually government shouldn't play a major role in that. But this is an opportunity given to us by the federal government to actually play a role in that and push some funds into some of these things to help in that way. Usually it is private organizations, not-for-profits, that do the legwork. This is an opportunity, given a reaction to an epidemic, whatever you want to call it, everyone thinks about it differently, a reaction of our federal government to basically fund things that normally are not funded by government. And it is an opportunity we should not miss or take lightly. And I just feel what I hear up here a little bit, maybe we are looking a different direction. And again, I'm one vote on the commission, but a portion of this needs to go to helping those people that are most in need in this county. And if we don't, we're doing a disservice to the citizens of this county.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Pickens?
Yeah, and John, I would enjoy having that conversation with you, because I'm involved in South Putnam Church, and we have a food pantry that operates, a few days a month, and also bring in a semi, once a month also. And I think they fed 200 families last Wednesday. But I think some coordination and education of who is providing at what times and days and stuff like that, so everybody does know, so we could get, you know, maybe in sync. So, but I would like to have that conversation with you sooner than later. Thank you.
Anybody else want to run up? The distinguished mayor. I think your town's already been mentioned a couple times.
Good afternoon.
Hello,
Thanks
sir.
for having me here. I'm not going to ask for any money. I have a
What?
question to the
Wait,
gentleman.
whoa,
What
whoa.
did you say?
I am not asking for money.
I got to fan them off.
But I have a question for the gentleman here who was speaking earlier, and it has to do with Commissioner Terry Turner had to say, and it's very important to us. We're a bunch of lay people in the South. This new money is a lot of money. We don't want to do it wrong.
Right.
When you spoke about hiring a counselor, I want to know, are there counselors in our territory that are specific to this? And if they are, and we hire them to protect us, not to spend wrong or to spend, and we got to spend in the future and we can't afford it, to guide us, will that money for that counselor come out of the plan?
Yes,
Yeah,
The answer is yes.
yes,
yes.
Thank you so much. That's all I have.
yes. That's how it happened before. Nancy, I saw you almost have a collision there.
While she's coming up here, I just wanted you to know, Mayor Joe, you about made me fall out of my chair. You didn't want money.
He's been in our chair, he understands.
Good afternoon, I'm Nancy Russo, I'm the Vice President of Putnam County Services for SMA Healthcare, 330 K. Larkin Drive. And I just wanted to clarify a couple of things that came up. The $2 million for the reentry program is not necessarily $2 million, it is a combination of things. It's about $460,000 to provide the actual services, which would be psychiatric services, medication-assisted treatment, therapy, case management, and peer services. It is also medication costs, which are astronomical. And, you know, we looked at different variations of the medication, speaking a lot with Major Sorensen and his staff, and the need to use a medication that cannot be easily diverted is what drove the cost up so high. So it would be an injectable medication to be used in their recovery pods, and they're going to be starting 2 recovery pods for people who are serious about substance use disorder. So we would be providing intensive services to them. The medication-assisted treatment would be in combination with that. And then we would also be working with anybody that had a mental health or substance use disorder throughout general population to get them the services that they need to get them to be productive citizens once they're discharged. So that's what the money would be used for that. And then as far as sustainability of that, I think it would go to say on how well the program does when we have it, and then how could we get the funds after that. And then, of course, the other big ask had a lot to do with infrastructure and reconstructing the building that we have in place and services. So we know that was a high ticket item, but it was also something that was asked of us to come up with a proposal for, so, because you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
So that's what that one was for, but I definitely, in the month of July alone, there were 224 inmates screened, and 124 of them were put on opioid protocols. That's 57%. That's a captive audience that we could be working with and help them to get better when they're in there and hopefully sustain recovery when they're out.
Nancy, that's kind of why I mentioned that opioid settlement money coming. I saw you smile when I said that. Not because of the opioids, but because there is settlement money coming. What that looks like for Putnam County, I don't know.
And
But-
it's probably gonna have to be spent on those
Yeah,
kind of uses
it's
too.
gonna have to be spent like that. So, yeah, I think if you don't survive this round, you know, there's more money coming. We all know that. And there's, you know, every time I go to a meeting, I send Sam a thing, hey, we can put this over on this fund or put that over there. And we just all got to keep our ears open to what can really take place. So, thank you.
Understood?
Are you done? I'm sorry, I
Yes, I
interrupted
am.
you.
I am done.
I apologize. Okay. You're just so kind and I always like talking to you. Mr. Adamzak?
So opioid addiction is an area where there's a known quantity to, if someone comes out of a program like that, of what the savings are to the government. And it's across all governments, your local, your state, and your federal. But the number they put to that is $750,000 per individual. So if they only were able to flip and create a situation where 2% of them were basically regular working members of the community, I think they are doing a little bit better than that with some of the people that are getting hired at Camargo and other things. And now we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now with those people that come out of those things. But you know, you're talking about through the year, that's 10 or 20 people, that's $7.5 to $14 million. That goes back into our community and it's just a savings. I mean, it's a no-brainer to me to try to find ways to help the addicted in this community, given how widespread it is, the new pressures we have with new type of drugs, new synthetic drugs. There's going to be more people. It hasn't hit this community with the deaths that it has some other communities, but there are people just dying because they tried something too, which is a whole nother side of this that we almost never talk about. There's people that try it for the first time and never breathe again. I mean, if we don't start taking stuff like this serious and we have an opportunity to do something about it, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Any further comments on ARPA funding? Okay, we're going to close that public portion of that. I'm going to take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to come back to our budget. Thank you. Do is I'll work with administration. We'll get some dates set up of some future meetings, and I'll bring it back to the board with some alternative dating, and we'll make a recommendation. Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Okay, on our next item, Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming that, that we're here today to do what? We've already seen the list. We've already Are we having a meeting just to have a meeting? Because we can't, unless you want me to go down and say, okay, I want item 3 added to the list or taken off the list. Because until we find out what we're gonna spend our ARPA money on, you know, we actually make that decision, which I think is the next decision that has to be made. Nothing on this sheet I know of has to be done before October or November, because it's all, the budget's done. Everything in here is capital money, so anything we spend this on is coming out of reserves, correct?
That's not true for the sanitation fund for sure. And our capital is theoretically still budgeted, so you still have a CIP plan.
Yeah, but in sanitation, even though it's our money, it's a different pot of money. He makes his own money, so it doesn't come out of reserves.
No, this is intended, what we started out 2 meetings ago trying to get approved was the capital improvement plan for '22. That's what is still pending in our budget cycle.
Well, I think the next step is probably gonna be then to find out, do you guys wanna go ahead and put them scales in the west and the south end of the counties? Because if you do, then let's approve that and let him, I mean, we've got to roll over the cell expansion, and we've got, if we're talking about the sanitation fund, we've got to roll over the cell expansion and the leachate, system engineering, that's a carry forward that,
So just to clarify, maybe back up a minute, the scales, the portable scales are not included in this. When his budget development was done, the portable scales were not included, and he is still looking into viable options to bring that back to you all. This is his normal, what was planned for him during normal operations for next year. That would be his normal capital budget as to what he needs to get accomplished for fiscal year '22, exclusive, again, of those scales, although he is bringing back a proposal once he works out all of the details related to it.
well, I would like to have an opportunity to sit down with him. I wanted to this past week, but as everybody knows, it's not possible right now to sit down and have a talk with him. And so I was hoping that in the past week, between that meeting and this one, I could sit down with him and go over this list of things that he has requested and ask him, and let him make his best case. Hopefully, he hadn't already turned into a pure government employee that just because the money's there, he's gonna grab for it. Sorry, Jay, if you're watching. Anyhow, I would like to take a look at some of this with him, and like, I've not fully meant to talk to him about it this past week, but, whenever he gets, where he can be around people again safely, I would like to talk to him about some of these items on the list and exactly what they cover, such as the different expansions in the different area and the screen that he wants $350,000 for. I know that's for a mining thing, but at one time he even mentioned that it might be less money than that if we used a different screen, and he was looking into that. So I'm not sure exactly how much of this $2.8 million that he's actually gonna need next year and how much he'd like to do. I know he's got to do something about his offices before all his employees fall through on the ground. They're pretty bad. So we got to start pecking at some of that, but the leachate expansion and collection system, is that something that has to happen right now? I almost thought that it was part of the lining thing for the other landfill, was the leachate, because I know they put in some leachate tanks and some different ground tanks for leachate is part of that. So I'm wondering, I guess that one got by me somehow, that we need a leachate expansion on top of the landfill expansion. I must have just missed something. So that part of it, I'd like to put off until Jay gets better and I can talk to him.
Well, commissioners, I'm gonna have to, I need direction from the board as to, these are the requested capital. We're at a point in our budget development that we need to either determine what the commission is willing to approve in capital and budget it out, or it gets put into a reserve or contingency, however you want to term it, line.
How much of this money then that's in this paper right here, do you have included in your zero-sum budget?
Sanitation has all of it. So of the sanitation department capital, every bit of that is budgeted in operational dollars, not from his general fund reserves. So so take one fund at a time. If what I'm asking today is direction. If the board is gonna approve his capital plan as it stands, then his fiscal year 22 budget that I'm gonna send to you guys next week will include that in capital lines. If you're not, then I've got to move it into the reserve or contingency line for then future meeting or discussion, and then move it back up. But either way, I've got to know where it's headed.
Well, on the sanitation, it's a different deal because it's a whole different pot of money, a whole different kind of money. They make their own money, they pay their own way,
Yes, they do.
hopefully when they're all done, we can give money back at the end of the year, more and more into the future. It's not the same as some of the other ones are. That's why my question, take sanitation out of the discussion for now,
Okay?
for this discussion. Does that mean that all the other requests that are in here, they're not included in the current budget, correct? In the capital budget, they're not included. So we have a zero-sum budget, so whatever we pay for out of here comes out of general fund reserves, correct?
Or fire fund reserves, or BPP.
Okay, well then I guess that's how I've got to back it up. I need to know which ones of these items are currently budgeted in our zero-sum budget in capital expenditures, either in BPP, in whatever that we've got money in, and what, so let's just, and let me try to communicate a little better. I know that you have a hard time speaking East End Road, so,
Mr. Turner, why don't we just leave sanitation alone? Let's just go to
well,
fire.
that's what I'm not even talking
Yeah.
about sanitation
Let's go to
now.
fire fund and talk about that.
Yep, that's what I'm
Okay.
trying to do. So if I pick the first one on the list, fire fund computer replacements, is that budgeted right now in capital improvements in our zero-sum budget that we have at this time?
The computer replacements and the purchase of the ice machines are, as it says in that up top. So the fire fund projected reserves is 2.3. The fire fund is operational balanced. However, any capital purchase will be made from reserves with the exception of the computer replacements and the purchase of the ice machines. So in his zero-sum budget, there is already an expense for the computer replacements and the ice machines. The other items would come from the fire fund reserves.
All right, let's take
How
them
much
one at a
money's
time.
in the fire fund reserves?
The projected fiscal year 22 reserve balance is 2.3.
So you're saying if we say the 1.1 million, $1.134 million, if we did that, you have the money either in fire fund or fire fund reserves to do everything under the fire fund?
Yes, sir, I am.
Mr. Chairman, I move we allow them to do the fire fund.
All right, we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Proper second by Commissioner Pickens for discussion. Mr. Adams, you had your light on?
I'll wait.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Utility fund, Ms. Julianne.
The utility fund does not carry reserves. It is only operationally balanced because we transfer revenues from the general fund to the BPP. So every dollar of the capital request would come from general fund reserves. The carry forward is obviously something that will ebb and flow based on where we end this year. That's a projected balance, what we'll come into fiscal year 21 with. They're requesting $90,000 in capital. All of it would have to be funded from the general fund.
And it's not included in the current zero-sum budget,
That's correct.
okay? Can they get by without a mini excavator for a couple of months or not? Because that's coming out of general reserves, you can't tell me it's got to be passed today, right? Because we're gonna pay for it we're gonna pay for it out of general fund reserves whenever we buy it.
We are.
It doesn't have to be paid for today, those reserves are still gonna be there in November,
Reserves don't go anywhere. That's correct.
okay? So then why do we have to pass that today? It may be that,
You don't have to pass it today.
we're just
If
gonna-
you want a capital improvement plan comprehensive for next year, then you've got to take this step by step. And if you don't, then you don't have to have it. You can do it line by line, item by item, problem by problem as it comes up.
Y'all do what you wanna do.
What's the pleasure of the board? Mr. Adams, that?
I guess I move that we leave this to future, kind of like Mr. Turner's saying. I don't know if we need a proposal to do that, but I like the idea of doing things as they come up unless there's a dire need. And I guess if you could explain that, is it better if we get the excavator as soon as possible or the truck? I mean, I guess the question would be, does this accelerate the ability to purchase this stuff quicker?
Yes.
So, right, so can someone explain that need then, if that, because I didn't understand that this was where we were going with this,
Well, the problem,
but we've gotten there, so let's hear it.
the problem that I'm having with this is that this is part of the overall thing that we're looking at. It's the utility fund, it's the utilities that's making it all work. It's the water, the sewer, the making that, putting the things in, the maintenance of everything. It's all one big plan. And I realize I haven't been to your office very much, but that hadn't been that I hadn't been working on it. That's the last step. Go over there and say, okay, y'all need to bury ditches deep different or whatever. That's the last step in this process. The first step is to make all the money work and have a plan.
Can I ask my
And
questions?
that's what we've been working on, and so that's my problem with starting to say, okay, you need an excavator here, you can have an excavator. You need a new truck, okay, you can have a new truck. You know, throwing 90 grand at this is not even gonna be a bump in the road, because this is a multi-million-dollar deal that it's gonna take to fix this thing.
That's
in East
exactly why
Carolina.
it scares the crap out of me every time
Yeah.
we talk about it.
Well, But I
So
understand.
for
how to fix
purposes
it,
of the
though.
mini excavator, your goal, I think you talked about it a while ago in a workshop, and part of it was not only to do lines and things like that, but it's for repairs and other, could you just go through that again? That one seems like more of a priority to me than the truck personally, but you
Oh,
tell me.
absolutely. That would be, out of those two line items on there, the mini excavator is my number one. Truck, yeah, the truck has reached its useful life. Yeah, it's gonna need replaced sooner rather than later.
Right.
However, the mini excavator will allow us to work a little faster, a little more efficient, than the current, skid steer that they have to keep changing stuff
Make
around.
the motion.
I make a motion that we move forward the mini excavator with attachments in the utility fund.
I'll
and
second.
we hold off on the crew cab.
Yes, we got a motion to spend $55,000 on a mini excavator with attachments by Commissioner Amzak, second by Commissioner Turner. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Next item, Julianne Transportation Fund.
Yes, sir. The Transportation Fund, I did two things. One, in light of the revised revenue estimates for BPP, the fiscal year 21 actual revenues exceeded the budgeted revenues significantly. So staff is recommending moving the capital projects from the Transportation Fund to BPP, some of them. And the movement, in that movement, what the board should remember is the Transportation Fund is always in the negative. And so even with the movement of the capital projects, the general fund is still transferring over $635,000, give or take. And so what I also did is, because the Public Works Division is funded by so many different sources, it's hard for you all to keep track of just how much money they have for individual. And so I've heard like we're losing money here or we're gaining money here. I tried to make it more a totality of the capital resources that they have. And so with that, the only capital project the transportation or capital purchase the Transportation Fund specifically would fund would be the surveying equipment. And then BPP, there's a recap, including the most recent request of the commission to move resurfacing up to $2 million, assuming the reserves allowed, which it does based on the actual revenues exceeding the budgeted.
Okay, wait a minute, before you, don't get off the fact, we're not using reserves. We're using more revenue that's coming in on the Better Place plan that you budgeted.
Okay.
Same, I know
You
what
can
you're
call
saying.
it
but I
whatever
don't
you want to call it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me.
we
At the end
found-
of this fiscal year, what's going to happen is that money's going to go to cash carry forward,
Gotcha.
and then it's going
I'm
to get
good, I'm
reallocated.
good. All right, so the first item is to approve the Transportation Fund surveying equipment. That's the first item.
That would be
So
true.
the chair is going to entertain a motion.
Again, I have to ask, This is in addition to our zero-sum balance, so it's coming straight out of reserves.
The one item in the surveying equipment is not. That is inside the transportation fund, although you can already assume the general fund's already giving them $635,000. But that
So
30,
it's already been
the
budgeted?
28, yes.
And why are we talking about it if it's already been budgeted?
Y'all still have to approve my capital plan. I don't get to approve a capital plan.
Okay. Last week, we asked for a list. I meant to ask you about it earlier, so I apologize for bringing it up now. But
That's
we
fine.
asked for a list of reserves, the best you could come up with as far as what you thought, you know, as far as projections for a bridge you know's coming or different things to give us an idea. And then the 6 or 7 million that by accounting practices we're supposed to keep in there and the amount of money that we have on hand.
What's your next one?
Did we come up with that? Did I miss it?
Yes, sir. It's broken down by each fund, so maybe the venue that I delivered it is causing some confusion. But I attempted to give you the breakdown by each fund. And so when we start each of the fund, there's a fiscal year 22
Fire
projected
fund.
reserves for
Talking
each
about
fund.
general reserves. I saw the fire fund, I didn't see anything about general reserves.
General's gonna be when we start talking about the general fund. So the general fund fiscal year 22
Wait a minute,
projected.
before we go there.
Okay.
We still have transportation fund.
But it all ties together.
Yeah, it does, but let's move this one forward, okay? And then we'll go, do you want to do that?
Well, first I want to decide if we have the money to buy it. I hate writing a check when there ain't no money in the bank.
And we're going to hold off on
That's
transportation.
what I was trying to figure out.
Julianne, go right to general fund fiscal year 22 and capital improvement plan.
So
Yes,
you,
sir.
can I ask another question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, general fund reserves, projected reserves. You think we have $14,754,000, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and out of that, how much reserves are general accounting practices? It's so many percent
Florida
of the
statute
total.
requires 10% of your operating revenues, which is an estimated 6 million, while GFOA recommends 16.67,
Yeah,
which is
well, I'm
approximately 10 million.
somewhere in the middle be better with me, so, I'm sure that somebody'd also recommend 20% if they could, so.
Sure.
So basically, 10% of operating revenues, which are about 6 million, so if we use 7 million just for discussions where we're a little over minimums, we've got another $7 million basically in $7.7 million in reserves that we can use towards some of these different items in this plan, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I'm ready to go back up to the
Okay, let's go to
transportation fund, Mr. Chairman.
Chair will entertain a motion on transportation fund.
So, what are you wanting to do? Buy the survey equipment? Or do you want to do the whole of that and the Better Place plan?
Let's do transportation fund first, then we'll go to better place.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page again.
No, sir, here, the transportation fund is already a budgeted item, we just
Okay,
need
that's
to
just the
approve.
survey equipment.
Right.
Okay, move approval.
Okay, we got a proper motion by Commissioner Turner, we have a second?
I'll second it.
Proper second by Commissioner Pickens, any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, the ayes have it. Julianne, better place plan?
Is there anything in the Better Place plan that hadn't already been talked about or put in the tentative budget that we've talked about, including raising to the 2 million?
Yes, the guardrail enhancements to the drainage and the bridges were all also allowed to be added based on the excess revenues that we've received.
But we talked about that previously, didn't we?
Vaguely, but I
Well,
just
that's
brought you
already
back
been
the
approved.
numbers.
You just need approval of the final
Correct.
Place
budget.
plan?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move a final approval of Better Place plan as presented here today.
Okay, we have proper motion by Commissioner Turner. Proper,
I'll second it, but I have a question.
okay, second by Commissioner Pickens. Mr. Adamsack, you're first.
Bill can go first. Commissioner Pickens can
Okay,
go first.
Commissioner Pickens.
So is that amount 6,273,161? Is that the amount?
Yes, sir, that will be just your fiscal year 22. It does not count what we're carrying forward for fiscal year 21. So it's actually more than that by about 2.5 million for public works projects.
It's that plus 2.5 million
Yes, sir.
that we're carrying?
2.5 roughly, yes, because we're carrying forward fiscal year 21 dirt to pave as well as Solium, Sailor, and one more drainage project off the top of my head.
Okay, that
So-
haven't been completed, but have been
Correct.
pledged.
Yes, sir. So the BPP total public works budget will be 6.2 plus the fiscal year 21 carry forward.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Amzat?
So I guess it's a little bit confusing, and part of it's probably because it's the first time going through this process, but what do we include in our, when we say we're trying to do 70% as dirt to pave, what items are we including in that?
Resurfacing and dirt to pave.
So does that, where does that put us with that 70% if we combine that? Because you have 1 point,
I think the
You're
other day it was
actually,
69 point some odd, just almost.
number still-
that number doesn't change because what you're adding to is carry forward dollars. So what your 70% metric is set by is new revenue generated. So when we set that the last time, the 1.4 plus the dirt to pave is 69.5% of your dirt to pave fiscal year 22 projected revenues. Everything we've added to is over and above that, done with carry forward dollars.
okay.
And may I say something too? Even though we have dirt to pave at that, we want to get to that mark, we also have resurfacing. We have roads that we don't want to fall apart.
Sure.
So let's just let's call it roads if we will, because it'd be very irresponsible of us not to take care of the roads we already have.
No, and that's why I had the question.
And also, we use gas tax to resurface roads. This ain't all the road money that we use.
Okay, we got a proper motion, proper second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Better Place Plan got moved forward. General Fund Capital Improvement Plan, Julianne?
That's just resurfacing.
No, that's this whole.
Okay, can I back up one item? The transportation fund items covered by the general fund, that's the last item under Public Works that actually needs you guys to take a look at it. The road and drainage project is something that we do every year. Those are tax dollars that come in, tax dollars spent out on resurfacing. The East Putnam drainage is the legislative appropriation, fiscal year 21 carry forward, plus what we've been legislatively appropriated for next year. So then if you go all the way down to the bottom of that table, transportation fund items covered by the general fund. This is in addition to the $630,000 the general fund is already transferring. This would come out of the general fund reserves if approved. This is equipment for the transportation department specifically.
I think you lost me. I apologize.
She's under capital projects fund.
Public
Transportation
Works
fund
Capital
items
Improvement
covered by
Plan, the
GF.
very last
I
section.
got it.
I'm
Okay,
sorry,
back.
yep,
Nope,
okay.
I'm there.
That $312,000 would come from the general fund, because again, the transportation fund is out of money, to be included in their capital plan.
Is this in addition to what we already had budgeted for this year?
Yes, sir?
Because say on top of his regular normal budget, Mr. Proctor wants another $312,000.
Yes, sir?
You sure are expensive, Mike.
He sure does have a lot of work.
So I'd like to speak for a moment.
Mr. Adams, you have the floor.
So
Speak.
my concern with all of this stuff is we keep buying more and more equipment, and we don't have the employees that run the equipment. So we're gonna be back in it, we're trading in tractors, we're trading in things that aren't at their useful life, because we lease them, I get that part. However, I think we need to start looking at figuring out a way to retain and recruit employees to run the equipment we have, unless there's the mulching head, I believe that's the mulching head that can do the ditches and do multiple things. I mean, that one has special uses, so I'm all for that one, because that one's just an attachment onto equipment we own today. But I don't see how we have enough people to run what we have today, to drive the hours for the leases that we have. The numbers don't add up from what I was supplied. And if we don't find a way to shift some funding, and because, like I said at the last meeting, and I get that it's recurring, but because we're way above our 16.67%, we can shift some of that to employee raises or funding him better on the employee side of things. I think we need to start looking at holding off on some equipment purchases and shifting it towards employee pay and employee to basically allow the employees for him to recruit better people, so we don't have 8 to 10 job openings out there all the time perpetually. We don't have people leaving. We don't have people accepting jobs and leaving the second day they're here, leaving the day that they were hired. I understand this is a problem throughout, but how are we expecting him to compete when we have basically Circle K and other places basically at this point saying, we're gonna give you $14 an hour to show up, and we can't even compete with the local economy, and we haven't even gone beyond the $10 minimum wage. At this point, the minimum wage thing is out of the door, because we can't compete with Walmart, we can't compete with anyone. It's not even a matter of competing with other counties, it's a matter of competing with base level jobs, and these jobs are higher level jobs than base level jobs. We need to find a way to fund that, and basically have you outline the absolutely most critical things. And from speaking with you the several times we have, the mulching head absolutely seems like one of those critical things. I don't know, do you have enough people to run all the mowers you got for 40 hours a week? And then, I don't know, it just seems like we're shorthanded, and we're gonna have equipment that's not running to its full potential as far as what our lease basis is.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
Mr. Shaw.
thank you. Most of the stuff is, there's several new trucks on here, again. Is that it's a need, because those are the trucks that we're driving are past their useful life. We put 3 motors in one of these vehicles already. So I get it, but we can muddle through. There's 10-foot mower decks on here. Doesn't take another body. It's better use of the equipment that we have now with I've got these smaller roads that don't have the larger 15-foot right-of-ways that I can mow a little safer with a 10-foot deck. And then the skid steer that's on there, man, it just makes it so much more efficient, just like the mini excavator for the utility department.
Well, pay your men a lot more and just let them use a shovel. That way they won't have to actually
Mr.
do.
Turner.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Turner.
I'm
But,
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
but I get what you're saying, sir, but what's on this makes us much more efficient as a department.
I get it. Thank you.
Sometimes the smart aleck in me just won't stay in, sir.
Mr. Adams, you still have the floor, sir.
I'm good, I guess.
Okay.
What happened to, I thought we were putting out for bid, or looking for people to do the smaller roads and stuff outside of the county.
We asked them to make a plan to do that between
Okay.
now and spring.
So we're gonna buy decks for that purpose, then make a plan for that. This is the kind of stuff that I just don't wanna,
The decks aren't the small roads.
yeah, the 10-foot decks, that's what he just said.
I know, but they're not, do you know how?
I know,
Well,
cause
you know, I understand he does computers for a living, he don't know how to tie his shoes when it comes to equipment, I get that. If you'll allow
I
me to
own some
kindly
equipment. I
if
maintain
you'll
my own
kindly let me
half-mile road.
kindly
Thank you.
Answer to him,
Mr.
these are not
Yeah.
small decks for small roads.
I have a deck on my tractor,
Okay.
thank
Yeah,
you.
they are smaller decks, and I am still looking at ways to contract out some. When I say smaller roads, it is some of these smaller local roads that we're in and about. Ashley Lake Plantation, some other stuff that have these really small right-of-ways that we need to
Right.
do.
I agree. And let me say this, before I call on Mr. Pickens, who's next. We have a tendency, we see these bat wings, one standing up in the air, blades are turning, sometimes going down the road. It's unsafe and probably unneeded to have the bat wings in every location in the county. Some areas do fine, but some areas don't do fine with it. Mr. Pickens, you're next on the floor.
Mike, some of the questions have been answered, but what do you need out of this first, the worst? Because you know, we're looking at leasing programs. Julianne, with some of these vehicles, I mean, how long do you think, you know, a projection of if we go with one or the other as far as a leasing program, would these vehicles maybe fall into that with the lease purchase that we're
It's
talking about?
possible, and if they are approved in the capital plan, we can budget them, but defer the purchase until we are able to make a final determination on the board's appetite to explore the leasing program on a small or large scale basis. So what could happen is, let's assume you agree to the $70,000 for Mike's, and we put $70,000 for fleet purchase. And several of those lease options that we are considering have the ability to customize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And so it might be a situation where if the board's appetite is to move forward in a lease scenario, with the dollars we've already allocated, we then can turn around and execute that lease scenario with the dollars already allocated. And it may end up that instead of him buying 2 vehicles next year, he ends up leasing 4 vehicles, but the dollars remain the same.
Okay. All right. Do you have, I mean, say the new mower max, I mean, are you getting rid of something that this will replace? Because I know the first we got rid of, say, the boom mowers or quit using those and we moved the mower max. Is that what this is? And you have somebody to run this? Because I have a concern of getting this equipment and not having anybody to run it.
Correct. The Mower Max is a 5-year lease to own, just like we did the last 2. And this third one would replace our third boom mower. Then I would convert that over if we needed to use it for another tractor or something else. But because we do own the Challengers, we have 3 Challenger mowers. We do own those outright. And this other boom mower would be used as a boom mower with our current personnel. Also, we had some folks go out and look at how we utilize those with our new ditcher head attachments. So they're just very complementary to each other. You could have 2 of them running down the road and dig ditches and cut grass and all kinds of stuff very, very quickly. So it is a save us a lot of time.
Okay, that's all I got right now.
Okay, and I want to say, I'm going to have a video at the next board meeting. We're going to show that. We determined the other day it was moving 5 miles an hour. If you had 2, as Mr. Suggs was standing there mentioning, coming right behind the other one, just think how many roads we could get done in a day's time, in a week's time, in a month's time. You gave me a number like 23 years of cleaning everything, and that got reduced pretty quick, didn't it?
Yeah, when we were out at Yelvington Road doing that ditch, we did over 6,000 feet in about 6 hours.
Right.
Where we do 1 week or 1 day of our grade alls, it's about a little less than 2,000 feet.
Right.
So.
Okay, Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Okay, Mike, again, I'm gonna challenge you as the Director of Public Works to come up with a mowing plan. I took a hit 2 years ago because I wanted to buy some tractors and some 15-foot mowers that I absolutely have to have, could not operate without them. So we took the hit and we bought them in the spring, and they helped some, no doubt about it, they helped some. But then, now we don't want 15-foot mowers, now we want 10-foot mowers. So we traded in 12-foot mowers to buy the 15-foot mowers, and now we want 10-foot mowers.
I don't want all 10-foot mowers. You got me wrong. I got 5 tractors. I'm going to have 3 of them with 15-foot bat wings on them. And some of those bat wings are about their useful life as well. So I'm going to, if it wasn't 10-footers, I'd probably be asking for some new 15-footers. But the 10-footers are going to be used in certain other areas that don't require a 15-foot bat wing.
Okay, we're trying to move this on, Mr. Chairman. I am gonna stay on you about the mowing between now and the spring, because for 2 years I've made that challenge and nothing's changed. So hopefully between now and the spring we can do it. I'd like to do what Commissioner Pickens, I'd just like to take the trucks off for now. The trucks, and let them see about leasing or doing whatever later and pass everything else. Could you give me what would that be, 312.50 minus 70 and 140? What is that number?
$172,050.
What was it, Julie?
$172,050.
Move 172.050.
Give me a proper motion by Commissioner Turner,
I'll second it, but I got,
seconded by Commissioner
Couple
Pickens.
questions.
Commissioner Pickens, you have the floor.
Julianne, you said, would that still be okay to pull it? And then we could look at the trucks later, or would you think it'd be better to go ahead and appropriate this money to have it there?
I can tell you, I can
But it
answer
could
that one.
always be done, it can always be done later, because it's coming straight out of
Be
reserves.
done later?
It's not
Okay.
like
That's the
we're-
direction of the board, for sure.
All right,
But would you rather have a placeholder number? Sure she would. Yeah.
well, I guess, excuse me, the wrong terminology, a placeholder number.
So I think that we keep coming back to this and back to this and back to this, and we have a pot of money of general fund reserves, and then everybody says, well, what have we said we want to use it on? If we don't budget it out, then there is no placeholder in that general fund reserves. It's one big pot of money. So that becomes completely the direction that the board wants to go in. Do you guys want to start allocating it out, or do you want to leave it as one big pot of money? It doesn't matter to me. I can keep the books either way you want to do it.
Well, another side of that though is that, it's like the healthcare thing. We needed $2.8 million, $2.5 million for the healthcare. If we didn't have that pot of reserves, we'd be passing the whole thing to the employees instead of a small percentage of 1 year. So reserves are there for a reason. You need reserves sometimes to make things work.
Mr. Amzat?
Yeah, so I think this does both, right? So that's what we're doing. So we're giving you some of the pot, and then we want to keep some in the pot in case if something changes.
Sure.
I would like to talk about putting one truck in, because I think the one truck is urgent. I mean, I've heard that from some of your employees, and I've seen one of the trucks. I don't know if it's the same truck you're talking about that's had 3 motors or whatever, but if it's possible, I'd like to see one of the trucks on an urgent basis be put on there, but I guess it doesn't really matter if we can do all 4 as a lease, so. So as long as that doesn't matter, I'm for what the motion was.
Mr. Pickens?
To add to the mowing program, we need a weed killer, herbicide, whatever else program also. Sprayer, we need something. I know you were looking into maybe hiring a company to do it, and maybe an option of maybe training some of our staff. I think we bought some equipment that's, has never been used, and I understand the liability there, but we need that also.
100% with you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll respond to that question. You're absolutely correct. I reached out to some folks this past week, and I should have some information on that hopefully by the end of this week on the requirements and then and how we can go about taking care of that, and I'll bring that back to the board in the next week or two.
All right, so we got a motion on the floor for 172,050, leaving the trucks off for future date. You can't get parts right now, the chips anyway, so I doubt you can get them in. So we can address that. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
Aye.
Okay, opposed. All right. Moving forward, Julianne?
Yes, sir. General fund. The general fund fiscal year 22 projected reserve balance is 14.7 and some change. It's there on your agenda. Of which Florida statutes requires 10% operating revenues be held, which is approximately $6 million, while GFOA recommends 16.67. The reserve figures is net the funds for the fiscal year 21 and 22 insurance fund, and also net a set aside for an entire year of augmented IT services, for which, again, I don't know that I'm going to need 100% of that set aside from general fund reserves, but we went ahead and set it aside. The general fund is operational balanced, and all approved capital expenditures would come from reserves. And then I gave you a figure if you approved 100% of what was being asked for. And obviously, you've already changed my figure. So that figure can go out the window. It goes up, not down, I guess, would be the point in case there. So what I have done is broken it down by division and also shown you the fiscal year 21 carry forward versus the fiscal year 22 request. Obviously, the legislative appropriation does not come out of general fund reserves. That's something we're getting legislative dollars for. And the fiscal year 21 carry forward would not come out of general fund reserves. Those are dollars that are already budgeted in this year's budget, and we would carry them forward. Those dollars are subject to change. They will ebb and flow based on where we actually project to end the year in the coming weeks, actual expenditures versus projected. With that, you will see a breakdown by division of each request, as well as there was potential ARPA funding opportunities dependent upon final eligibility criteria being met and BOCC direction of those capital expenditures, and you'll see that those dollars as well.
All right, I want to ask a question before we turn it over. Are we going to be consistent here and look at, are we looking at vehicle replacement for animal control, codes enforcement, general services, and parks and rec?
I think we need
So
to
we're
look at
seeing-
leasing all of them.
Are we going to wait on all of those?
That's at the board's direction.
I know, but did I miss any is what I'm trying to say. Because I don't think I missed any. in the process here. So I guess the question on the table is, okay, let me ask this maybe.
Fleet maintenance has
Is there
one as
anybody
well.
that's got to have a vehicle right now and you can't do anything other than
I
that?
hope not, 'cause there ain't none available.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not here anyway.
Yeah, that's the,
Mr. Siafi, you do need a vehicle, but even if.
Why? We bought him 5 last year. What'd you, what,
Wait a minute, I'm asking,
another one?
Mr. Siafi had his hand up. Let's be,
So not once did I ask for any building department vehicles. We're looking to revamp code enforcement and animal control, whose vehicles are over 200,000 miles, and they're Fred Flintstone in it right now. So we'd like at some point to update those. And no air-conditioned boxes. Okay.
I thought the air conditioning was minimal cost anyway, right, wasn't it? But that's besides the point. But I guess the question is though, are you, because we do know that there's the chip shortage and there is that stuff in play, so
right.
we're not gonna get a vehicle right away, even if it's not like we're going down to the lot and buying it off the lot. Do you feel if we wait for this comprehensive leasing plan, that really puts you behind the 8 ball in any way? Because how long do we think that's gonna take to go through and figure out how we would lease all these as a package? And I guess, are we starting that, or are we? That's important
We
to
are
the
well
decision.
into that project, but
Okay.
I would be hesitant to promise you a date certain.
Well, I know there are trucks available. They're just coming in slowly. I know we have a chip shortage, but most of the vehicles for animal control are the heavy-duty chassis, and I've seen them on the lot, so the boxes can be ordered. So if we get to that point, we can probably obtain those vehicles and utility boxes for the trucks. We're just running into a point where the maintenance cost outweighs the value of the vehicle, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My only point was, Mr. Chairman, is I think we need to absolutely look at what needs to be leased. Now, I don't think we can lease ambulances, and I don't think, maybe if the animal control truck that Mr. Siafi's talking about is actually one of those big trucks, like the dual-wheel trucks with the big boxes on the back, that they asked for an air conditioner in, and we said no. Yeah, couldn't help it, John. So anyhow, basically, I don't know that would be an option. I mean, you can lease anything, but I don't know that would be an option for a competitive lease like half-ton trucks would be, or, regular half-ton or three-quarter-ton crew cab trucks would be. I think that would be a lot easier for a lease option. So the larger ones maybe, I don't know. Go ahead, Commissioner Pickens.
Commissioner Pickens?
yeah, and that's one of the things that Julian's looking at, or we looked at, is really three-quarter ton down, I believe is what it was, maybe some 1 tons.
There would be a few 1 tons thrown in there probably, but 3/4 ton or less are easily leasable. And through some of the other folks we talked with, even animal control with dog boxes and stuff are leasable if needed.
Right, and to also, John's issue is we're getting to a point where a lot of these vehicles are costing us really more for maintenance than they're actually worth. So it's time to do something just a little slower getting this put together than I thought it would be, so.
And that was one reason I came up here, because probably 30 to 40% of our vehicles are what I consider underwater right now. Where we are, it's the cost of maintenance exceeds the cost of the vehicle as it stands right now. So.
I guess the only other thing I'd like to talk about is the digital sign replacement DOC. Sorry, what?
Yeah, he's. Go ahead, Mr. Adams, you have the floor.
I don't support the sign replacement at the DOC. I don't think we should have a sign at the DOC. I think it flies in the, just in my understanding it would, I don't know. I just don't see its necessity. I think we should move this forward and maybe leave off the vehicles for code enforcement as part of the leasing thing, the 2 crew cab trucks and the vehicle replacement for fleet maintenance, and put those under the future lease plan, if that's possible. And obviously leaving the ones with the equipment attached to the back on there for animal control and the ambulances. So I'm not putting that as a motion, I guess, but that's where my thoughts are.
I'm not far, if I may, Mr.
You may.
Chairman, I'm not far from you, Commissioner. I would like to also talk about the two EMS station refurbishments in West Putnam and Pomona Park. And and when you move down to general services, Wi-Fi upgrades. What do we have around here that's working so?
IT, sir. That's under
Huh?
IT, sir.
Okay, excuse me, IT. What do we have around here that's so bad that we need $90,000 in Wi-Fi upgrades? Wi-Fi works when I go in my office and turn it on, unless IT's mad at me, and then it doesn't work.
Well, it probably won't work today then.
It probably won't work today, that's correct.
Or tomorrow, or the next day.
Or it won't work the rest of this week.
No, this is an upgrade from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi 6, and it has mostly, my understanding, and I am not an IT person, but it has a lot to do with security and of the system more so than just your Wi-Fi working. It would also incorporate in our water plants, which is what makes it, the security portion of the infrastructure is what makes it ARPA eligible funding, again, if desired.
Okay, and then on top of that, you have the routers and network connectivity that we're looking at possibly using ARPA money for, correct? And the next one is the system doors at the government complex.
If those two items both are beyond what we can now support in maintenance. Again, I'm not an IT person, but I've sat it for hours with Bob drawing circles for me so that I can understand it on my level. Those core routers are going to go out of service, and we will no longer be able to sustain or support them. So we have no option on that. The access control system, we're already at that point. We have some significant failures that cannot be fixed.
Okay, I guess of where I'm trying to get to,
Okay.
is we just hired a consultant
Yep.
to go through IT. We're gonna pay them a bunch of money if they live. Now, I understand they're not gonna look at the doors at the they're not gonna look at the doors that here in the OC, the electronic doors. So that one take out of it. But wouldn't they be looking at things like hardware and software and what we're doing and how to move forward and what have you? And so why are we buying
Well, they already
Wi-Fi
recommended this.
upgrades and network?
In their plan that they submitted in February, they already made these recommendations from their assessment.
They who? The new
The
people?
contractor, yes.
This
Contractor
has been
did?
vetted by them, and it would go back with this would be a project in conjunction with them to get it executed.
So this, that, the core routers are the ones that operate the whole loop for the county. So if you have something go happen and it's end of service life and you lose one of those routers, the vendor will not touch it. So basically, unless you have the parts and the ability to fix it on your own or out of your shop where you got your tractors.
So is this something you recommend with you?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think we have a choice on that. As far as the access
Wi-Fi
control.
upgrades also?
Yeah, because again, it's the cost saves you on the security back end of it. So it's not a one-for-one trade-off, but there's probably a 40% gain on the fact that you don't have to put some additional security things, because the federal government's coming into some of our other agencies here in the county and requiring some things. And under Wi-Fi 5, it's not as cost-effective as Wi-Fi 6 because the layer in 6 allows for some of that in the technology.
Okay.
Did you follow all that?
Yes, sir, right to the last 5 and 6. Okay.
As far as the last one, I don't know what's failing, so I don't have an opinion.
Well,
on
I'm
that.
good. If you're good with that, I'm good with that. I just needed some explanation. I need some further explanation on the EMS stations in West Putnam and Pomona Park. Are these new ones? Are these the ones that we took over? Are these just taking existing ones and making them nicer? What is the $700,000 for?
So the one in Pomona Park, we have crews that stay in the back of a building, and they have no way out of the building except to exit through the vehicle bay.
It costs $350,000 to knock a hole in the wall?
Well, we considered putting because it's only got room for one person, and the system's going to have to expand through there. So we thought about putting in a separate building on the outside of it in order to house some folks in the future, besides just going down there and making a hole in the wall, for no better term. Is just trying to do some expansion out there so that we can house crews when that day comes, because of the amount of the people that are volunteering down in that particular area is none. So I'm going to have to put some crews down there and have nowhere to put them.
I guess West Putnam, what's the explanation for that?
The West Putnam one is, as currently right now, as we sit at Mary Wisham Park, I got to put these things in a budget, because if I don't, then if we don't get alternative funding somewhere, we're not going to get there. Is I have 5 people staying in a station that's built for 2. I mean, we're overcrowded. I mean, there are folks that would consider switching all the stuff that we have there now and making bay space on the outside to hold our apparatus in.
I understand what you want, JR, I really do, and I don't disagree with it. There's a need, I really don't.
Okay.
My point being here, out in Flora Home, we bought a mobile home for $62,000, and we put everybody up in that mobile home. And it's not ideal, and it's not a 150-mile-an-hour wind load, so somebody has to get out of it if a hurricane's coming.
Yes, sir.
But that's what we did. Now you're wanting to remodel one for 2 different ones for $350,000 a piece.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I understand what you want, but is the need there? I mean, I understand you got to have a place to put people.
Right.
But I don't know that you need to put them up in the Ritz-Carlton. You might could put them up in a nice place.
Right, I understand that, but I don't know that we can put them in a mobile home. I mean, I don't know we can still get there underneath the building code. You can ask Mr. Siafi. I don't think they'll allow us to get there anymore. I don't disagree with you. I just don't think we can get there.
Can't get where? Can't use a mobile home to house people to sleep at night?
No, sir. If you start looking into the building code underneath fire and rescue stations, it requires it to be 150-mile-an-hour wind load. So I don't know that you can get there with a mobile home. I mean.
So basically, you can't have one at all then, because if you don't fund $700,000, you just ain't gonna have one at all. You have to take the building you have now and try to make it fit your need, correct?
Correct.
Which is cut a hole in the wall and put in a door.
We could, but there's no room for it if we had to put anybody else down there. That station only has the ability to hold 1 person. I mean, they just took a small closet area and put somebody in many, many years ago, and this is just a way to get us out of that closet that they're currently staying in.
You know, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is being lost in me being who I am. I truly believe that nobody wants you there faster than I want you there, JR. But you made tremendous steps in the last year, tremendous steps. I respect you for that. But it's, for lack of trying to turn it back into a simple analogy, you can't just bite the Tootsie Pop. You got to lick the lollipop until you can get there. $700,000 in 1 year, and there's no appropriations. Have we even asked for appropriations?
Yeah, we just put it for the West End
We just
station.
didn't get
Yes, sir.
them?
Yes,
We
sir,
did
just
for West Putnam, not Pomona Park.
Correct. And we
That's for a new station, that's different than this.
Right, but if we build a new place, we could move some of the crews out of where they currently are and put them back in a better.
Let's
better
finish
environment.
this subject, and then I'll move on to my other subjects before we get done here in a minute.
All right, Mr. Adams.
I guess my concern is where the location of the new proposed West Putnam Fire Station may be. And again, the only way, and we could get off of the idea of paving Lake Susan Road if that fire station was
Okay.
out near Gordon Chapel. But it's important to this, because I'm not,
It's there somewhere, it's refurbishment.
no, that's in Mary Wisham. That doesn't
Yeah,
solve the
but
problem
let
of
me
getting
say this,
people.
Before we
The
have
hole
that.
in, the hole in our service is a specific area
But
with
before-
about 3,000 people that you can't get there from here.
Respectfully,
Not what
Mr.
we're
Adams, before we have that conversation, you're gonna have the Citizens Committee find a location, first of all, because that's one thing the audit dinged us for, is we didn't go out to the citizens and find that, based on ISO, based on 5-mile radius. So there's a lot more work to be done before we ever go have that conversation right there. So let's stick to the refurbishments right now.
My concern with the refurbishment is, I don't want to refurbish this station if we're building another station within 3 miles of it. So that's why it's important. If we're going to build the other station out near Gordon Chapel area, then the refurbishment makes sense. If we're going to build the other station between Johnson and this station, then it's a waste of $350,000 in my opinion. So that's why it's important to this subject, and that's why I bring it up.
That's a good point, Mr. And Okay.
at the end of the day, I'm good with doing one
I
at a
know.
time, to be honest with you, because I mean, it's pushing,
Right.
doing one this year, doing one in the future is just perfectly fine with me, because I don't know if we can get to them pulled off in one
Where are
year
we on
anyway.
Station
Right now, you
20?
got one guy sleeping in a closet in Pomona Park.
That's
Let's-
correct.
Do we
okay.
have someone
Mr.
sleeping
Pickens?
in other stations in West Putnam, in Interlochen, or in Grandin, or in West Station 20? How do we look from that perspective? Is there an opportunity maybe for less than $350,000 to spread that to these other stations that do exist today that may have a room that could be?
Yeah, but we don't have the ability to put taxpayer dollar in private buildings,
That's right.
best of my knowledge.
Unless they
And
turn
those
them
are all
over.
privately owned buildings.
Do we have people staying in them today with the way that they're configured?
Yes, sir.
I know
All right.
how to solve
So we have some coverage, I guess, is what I'm
Yes,
trying to get at right now. I'm speaking specifically about West Putnam.
Correct.
And then Aquilla, obviously, we have coverage there in Flora Home
In Melrose.
Yep.
and Melrose.
All right, you done, Mr. Advent?
I guess, I don't know.
Mr. Pickens?
JR, on the one in Pomona Park, would the town of Pomona Park, would they participate in this at all?
Well, it's a county building, you know.
Understand that.
And it's owned by the county. I can't answer that question for you. I wish I could.
Okay, in the refurbishment of this, how many people would you be able to house there?
I mean, I don't see a reason not to build, at least house at least 3 people there. And I mean, like I said, that was just the estimated cost. I don't know what it's really going to cost to build a 1,800 square foot building out beside it for people to be able to stay in. I really don't know what it costs in today's construction. That was just a rough estimate. It may cost far less. I'm just not sure.
Okay, so you're not
Just a budgetary number that I just put
you're
in.
not refurbishing, you're gonna.
I would like to build a
it's
place on
new-
the
it's a
outside
new
of there
building.
with about a 5-foot separation or 10-foot, whatever is required by code to make it a separated building.
Okay, and then the addition of a mobile unit or a portable unit that come in, is that an option?
If
I
you,
might refer to
if you
Mr. Shelby.
change building officials, you might.
Golly. Go get that gavel for me, please.
What was the question, Chairman?
Don't even, it's not even, no.
So here's the deal.
He
We
wants to
can't-
know the
We
mobile.
can't move a mobile home in to house the firemen.
Okay,
We can move in a commercial mobile unit. It'd be like a modular construction. So there's some options, but they would have to be retrofitted for sleeping and fire sprinklers and all that kind of stuff, so. There's some costs associated with it. The mobile home does not work for us.
Is that one in Flora Home just a straight mobile home, or is it a modular?
I don't remember.
It doesn't have
But
sprinklers.
we
I've
use
been
it for
told.
Mr. Pickens has the floor.
Oh, well,
JR, in your plan for the whole picture, I understand this is where we live, near where we live. Where does this fall in there? You got it on here, so you would like to have it done.
Right. The biggest thing I'm trying to do now is get the person that I currently have sleeping there an ability to get out of a building that he doesn't have to exit through an apparatus bay. That's my main concern. We're eventually going to have to put some more staffing down that Crescent City, Pomona Parkway. Even if it's for our volunteers to stay the night at the fire station with them. I mean, they don't have nowhere to come. They have nowhere to, to do that kind of thing. So that's eventually, yeah, we need to start building some of our facilities to hold the future. If we don't do it now, do it later. I mean, but eventually one day we're going to have to say we're going to have to build a station now because we've got to put people in here because we can't answer our calls. I'm just trying to put a plan out there to where we can slowly take steps at this to get us to an end goal someday.
I want to elaborate for you gentlemen a little bit. Now it's on the record, so we have a guy sleeping in a less hazardous condition, traveling through a more hazardous condition, so we might want to look at something at this point. So that'll be in your plan?
You had to emphasize that.
That's what
didn't
he's looking to do.
you? Mr. Turner, you have the floor. Then Mr. Adams.
okay. So, the fire station refurbishments, we're thinking about adding them in there because they're not ARPA eligible, correct? Firehouse refurbishments, because they're not painted in green on this.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so I don't know that I can get there, 2 of them in 1 year for $700,000. Okay, so then the next one is the ambulance replacements and all the doodads that go with the ambulance replacements for $615,000. Do the ambulances, you have 2 ambulances now you're taking out of service, is that what it is?
That's 2 replacement units, yes, sir.
Okay, how old are they?
6 and 7 years old each, with 500 to 700,000 miles
Were
on
we
each one of
running
them.
them 8 and 9 years previously to now?
Sir?
Weren't we running them for 8 or 9 years previously to now?
We don't have, the oldest truck we have on the road right now, I think is a 2015, 2014. So that's since I've been here. I don't know how long they ran them before I got here, but I mean, right now we're between 500,000 and 750,000 miles in 6 to 7 years.
Okay. Yeah, whatever the commission want to do. I want to talk about Parks and Rec, but probably need to finish up through here first.
Mr. Adams?
What about, I mean, because it's kind of a swag, these numbers, the 750,000. What if we approved 250,000 per location, and then obviously if he needs more, once we go through assessment and figuring out what's needed, would that be beneficial?
Sure.
Because it seems like a pretty high number to me.
We sat down, these were preliminary numbers we sat
Yeah,
down
yeah.
with, the construction
I'd
costs
rather
going
see
through
us
the
start
roof.
with a smaller number, and then if it comes out from doing the research and the drawings and all the other crap that has to happen, obviously, that it comes out that it's gonna be 325, then we come back to the board and we try to find the 75,000, then going, hey, 720,000 out there. Would that be more amicable, I guess, Commissioner Turner, if we did 250,000 each?
I'm fine with
And
that.
then
It's just a
Whatever you
placeholder.
want to do, Commissioner.
I'd be all right with that. The motion's gonna be very strong. Can we do this area by area, maybe?
I think you're gonna have to, because I don't know you're gonna get 4 people to agree on every single line item all the way to the end. You might, I don't know.
All right, let's, Mr. Pickens has the floor now.
So even though hopefully you're gonna get some money for a new fire station, this upgrade would be beneficial also in West Putnam.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't pull all of your units out of that greater interlocking area. We can't do that. I mean, even if you build a brand new station out, you can't take all of your resources and move them to another spot, because they're well needed right there where they currently are at Mary Wisham Park. I would always leave that ambulance. I would never take that ambulance out of that interlocking area. I mean, I think that's detrimental to it'd be detrimental to the service around there. So, I mean, if you moved it, you may move the fire truck that's there. You may move it a little bit further west into the new location. But right now, I mean, you'd have to decide to leave it there. I don't see us getting rid of the building. And one of the thoughts we even put in for appropriations for it was to even try to make it like a point of distribution for post-storm, or even run, when we did the shot vaccine thing, we put in kind of grants to try to see if we could help marry these things along. And I mean, at the end of the day, we may get one, and then we can turn this back into match dollars or whatever we have to have to build it out.
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Problem I'm having with some of this, I don't mind refurbishing one, and I don't mind replacing one, but if we build another fire station and it doesn't replace one that we're already doing, then what you've done is you've just made reoccurring expenses of another fire truck, another whole fire crew, and everything else. That's where you're gonna lose me. I understand that we can't have enough firemen if your house is on fire, I get it. But we've also only got so much money, and we're setting ourselves up for failure if we do it at a point to where we just raise our reoccurring expenses over and over and over. You said that a minute ago that you're gonna have to take the Pomona Park location and remodel it and put something else on top of it where you can add more people down there than you currently have at the present time. So what you're saying is, unless I missed something, you're saying that you're gonna hire more firemen and put them down in that area and expand that and make that more higher reoccurring cost for future, is that correct?
In the future, I mean, I'm not saying it's next year or 2 years down the road, but I don't want to do something now and then have to come back and redo it because I didn't do it right the first time. So I was planning for the future, doing it right the first time, so when we do have to put folks in there, the place is ready to go.
So it'll probably be a little while before you actually need a major refurbishment.
Could be, yeah. Could be 5 years down the road. I mean, depends on what happens in the area. I mean, the area takes off and needs a lot of development. We may be looking at need to put them in and
Well, if it became an emergency issue, it'd be a lot easier for us to pass it as such. But to earmark $500,000, $750,000 of our money into roll over from year to year to year to year because it's earmarked instead of, using it for something that is, actually is necessary at the current time, I have kind of a hard time with that.
I might be getting somewhere with you.
Graham, Tap?
So, again, same as the trucks and stuff, is there any reason we can't just fulfill this request once we have all the numbers? And let's say it comes up with 300,000, and then if we have the money, why can't we leave these two items off and then have you do an analysis to figure out what it's actually gonna cost to get exactly what you want in Pomona Park, and have that as an item you bring to the board? And I think that goes in line with what we're doing with the trucks, in my opinion.
Well, are you done?
I'm asking the question, can we do that? It's-
You
Are
do
you
whatever
asking
you
me? You're looking at me.
Somebody, whoever can
Sorry.
answer that question.
As the budget officer, again, the budget changes daily. So whatever the board directs, we can do.
Yeah.
The feasibility of a large-scale project like this not being budgeted and him getting vendors to respond to his inquiries may pose him some challenge. We would not be able to do an official solicitation or procurement document for whatever plan he'd like to execute because we don't have dollars budgeted. So it would be an unbudgeted expenditure at that point. Could he get you budgetary estimates? Maybe, to the best of his ability to project those costs for you guys to consider if you want to move forward at that time. But then we would be starting over with procurement and everything.
We haven't started anything yet, right?
We have not. So typically, the way it works is you get budget aligned, then you get procurement, then you bring it to the board for an award of the procurement. If we don't have budget aligned, we're not sure what we're procuring.
Okay,
You done?
sure.
Okay. Mr. Pickens, you're next.
Jared, the one in Pomona Park, it's an unsafe housing condition. And if I understand correctly, you're not planning on, in the immediate future, housing more people there, maybe one more, but not putting a full staff, which would be the big reoccurring expense, is to straighten out an issue of unsafe living conditions of somebody that's already living there. So building that one would be planning for the future, you're not asking to fully staff it.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Turner, I think you're light with, I had to reset the thing.
Okay, my button's on.
Yeah, well,
I'll turn it off for you. How's that?
there you go.
Surprised you didn't need me to fix it for you again.
You want to move down to parks? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, I think we're going, like Commissioner Adams Act said, I think we're almost gonna have to pass this a piece at a time, as we go. So I'll take a stab at that. The first thing I wanna know is, says on here, the LED lighting system upgrades $100,000. Okay. Do we have lights there now?
We do. They are requiring continuous repair, and they're at a
Well,
point.
we can do a lot of repair for $100,000.
You can't at this point. We're very limited in what we can do with the lights on some of the fields because the poles have gone bad. The lighting elements have gone bad. So we're at a point where to repair it is worse than to replace it. He doesn't have budget operational dollars to make the necessary repairs either. However, again, we have submitted ARPA requests. If the board so desires to entertain that, then this, of course, would come out of the general fund capital and be covered via ARPA on a much more substantial basis.
But it could also just be added later if ARPA pays for it.
3 seconds to use talkback.
What?
I have not. Rick, could you come here?
You're pretty good. You didn't even throw it out in the room.
It came very
It was
close.
like a frisbee.
Go ahead.
Could you also make his button stop beeping? It's bothering me.
Something's going haywire up there.
Anyhow, okay, so some of these I have a little issue passing, and then especially if we might use it, ARPA for part of it or not. So I'm gonna take a stab at this. I think that the sign at EOC, we had talked about funding that sign with the money that came from where?
Surplus sales,
Surplus sales.
$168,000.
I thought we already passed that as a motion.
No, we have not.
Okay, well, why don't, I thought that was an excellent idea. Use surplus sales money to fund that sign.
Is that a motion?
Okay, that's a motion.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second it for discussion.
Mr. Pickens, you have the floor.
Well, I don't care if you do it or not. Just
JR,
trying to
is
get
it still
through it.
around the amount that you've had, was $40,000 or something like that?
Yeah, we're gonna spend up to
All right.
42,000.
This surplus was surplus of your equipment? Your equipment.
Some of it was, but I mean, I don't know what the exact breakdown was, what the total sales were that.
Yeah,
That
total
amount.
sales.
But we will cover the amount for the sign off of our surplus, yes.
Any
How long
further-
how long the sign gonna last?
It's got a 5-year warranty, so it's gonna last 5 years.
Okay, I'm good, I'm fine.
Mr. Amzak, I see your button.
yeah.
I can't see.
I'm not for the sign in any way. I don't think you advertise where EOC is. I think that's just not a good idea, especially with the long-term, what emergency operation centers are going to become going forward. I just don't, if it was a different location, I might be able to support it. But I just don't think you put a banner outside of your EOC, because an EOC does things other than just hurricanes. It could potentially be if we have a different type of threat to our community. And when you get a threat, the EOC becomes a target. And I just think it's a bad idea in general for us to even be talking about the location, for us to be putting signs out in front of it, especially a digital one. Procedurally, I just think it flies in the face of anything emergency operation that I ever did in the military. It flies in the face of what I've read. I've read through some online stuff on EOCs, throughout the country. There's people that get college educated on the idea of an EOC. If our only point of having EOC is if we have COVID and we have people staging there, or if we have hurricane response, we have people staging there, then I can maybe get there, but I just don't see the value of the sign. I do not hear from anyone that they check the sign out for updates. It's been down for how long? A couple of years. I haven't heard anyone coming to me saying, hey, when we can get the sign back up, or I really miss the picture of the fire. I think we could do some static signs that maybe update the fire status throughout the county would be a better plan, if that's part of what we use it for, and it is what they use it for in the past. I don't know what your plan is to use it for. I'm just not for funding that sign in any way.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that one's off this list,
That's
because we're
off
gonna
this
use
list.
other monies for it.
Well,
Okay,
still your reserves, but yes.
well, I understand, but it
Yep.
comes out of reserves, but the money that went in reserves was from the sales of the equipment, or
We
the
didn't budget that
surplus
much.
equipment.
We
So,
didn't budget that much this
that's
year.
right. So
Yep.
you can always say what you want, but it's the reserves, it's coming out of reserves, that's correct.
That's right.
Okay. The next thing is, I want to take the 2 fire stations off the list. We'll talk about them later. If you would like to put $200,000 in there, or $250,000 in there, I'm with you on it, and let him start the process and see what we actually really do need. But I got a real problem sticking 700,000 in there and him telling me, well, we might not need that for a few
I get it.
years. I got a problem with that, sorry.
I was at like 500,000, but
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'd like to take them both out until they tell me, hey, I need it right now.
I'd much rather
Put
see
$100
$42,000 spent on a fire expansion than a sign.
What'd you say? I'm
Nothing.
sorry. Okay, so.
Well, I think he's told you that Pomona Park is needed right
I
now.
think he said Pomona Park is
So
needed.
if we're
Okay,
gonna
so
do
can we
anything,
put 100 in there and get the needed repairs, and he can go get his pricing and do whatever? If he needs more, he can bring that back to us.
why don't we just
That'll
leave,
generate the step, won't it? If we've got 100,000 in there for it, then you go and you can generate what you need now, not what you need 5 years from now.
Okay.
or could we postpone West Putnam to next year and just go ahead and, because we know the needs in Pomona Park.
Yeah.
We know that. We got a guy
Yeah,
sleeping
but he
on
just said they probably won't need it for 5 years.
not Pomona Park. West
What he
Putnam.
said, wasn't it?
I got
This-
I mean, the issue is I got a person that stays down there in an unsafe environment. It's nothing that anybody in this room
Well, I'm
did.
trying to push that one forward.
Right, that's the one in
Right.
Pomona Park.
So let's do
That's the one.
250 on that
Yeah.
one and let's, West Putnam next year. Could we do that?
Certainly.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Not with this commissioner, but sure.
What do you want to do then? Just against everything we do, no matter what it is?
No, no. I do think that West Putnam is important for different reasons. And without knowing the future of a future station, I think we do need to prioritize that along with the safety of this one individual, to get, that West Putnam is where we need some expansion and some
All
extra
right, let's
services.
look at maybe 100,000 for West Putnam right now as a placeholder number to start looking at.
Yeah, I
Let's
think,
move this forward, okay?
would that help you?
And 250 for Pomona Park, okay?
If we did 100,000 towards West Putnam, would that help you get a placeholder, or is that?
It'll give us the ability to start the process and start looking. It'll give us the ability to have it designed and all that
There
kind
you
of
go.
stuff.
Good.
Sure, and then we can bring it back, then if you guys want to fund it at a later date, that's
All
fine.
right, we're down at Parks and Rec. Mr. Turner, you had the floor before the machine went crazy on us.
We need to vote on that or not?
No, we already voted on the other, we haven't voted on all
We
the
haven't
other.
voted on EMS yet. We voted on emergency management, though, as far as the sign goes, and we,
Well, that took it out of this pool altogether.
That took it out, correct. It's not in this pool of money at all. And we're gonna take all the trucks out except for anything 1 ton or bigger.
Right,
Anything smaller than a 1 ton, half, 3/4, whatever, we're gonna look at the lease program, right, wrong?
Well, I think there were some 1 tons that we can look at the 1 tons also.
That was, y'all were looking at the 1 tons also, and how long do you think it'll be, Commissioner Pickens, before you get us an answer on that program?
I refer to Julianne, you think, on that, since she's toting most of the load right now. We had a meeting with Enterprise, and we've got some proposals with them, but we met with the Beck Automotive Group, and it's a broader program, and we
Well, if we don't-
need to look at that.
If we don't do a capital improvement, if we don't approve any of the vehicle capital improvements, we could always approve them in a couple of months, couldn't we, once we figure out if we're gonna lease them or not?
You can approve
You just change the capital budget at that point, and then you'd have the direction you needed,
Yes.
that's right.
okay? Well, that's what I'm saying we do. We take all of the trucks out until they make the decision on what they're gonna do with them as far as buy or lease.
Okay.
All right, so let me clean this up. So under animal control, we take out the vehicle replacement. Under codes enforcement, we take out the vehicle replacement. Under general services, we take out the vehicle replacement. And under parks and recreation, we take out the vehicle replacements. On the EMS stations refurbishment, West Putnam's $100,000 placeholder number to get it started. EMS station refurbishment down in Pomona Park, $250,000. We removed the $42,000 sign out of that CIP list. We've already voted on that. So I think we can do this
There's a
all.
vehicle and fleet as well, if you're remove, I need some
Vehicle and
direction.
fleet,
Yeah.
where
All
did
the
I-
way down at the
all
bottom
the
of
way
the
down at the
page.
bottom. Sorry about that. So we take out all that vehicle. So all we got, and the items in green will go to ARPA funding. We'll dedicate that to ARPA funding. Is that what I'm hearing? So really, we can pass a motion, gentlemen. The
Okay,
chair.
we're with
Is-
Parks and Recs too now, we're adding that in there also. So in the green, we'll look at ARPA funding for the refurbishment of South Putnam and then Theobald, correct?
Correct.
That
because
is in
those
an
were-
ARPA, our ARPA proposal does include South Putnam and John Theobald.
Doesn't mean we have to do it. We're just putting this in there now, and we'll have the discretion to do it later on down the road. Mr. Sugg?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This has been a very detailed conversation, and I certainly don't want to muddy the waters, but I do want to go back to Commissioner Turner's comments, because I think they're germane about the purchasing of certain vehicles and not. And as much as we would like to lease everything, I would really like for my commissioners to reconsider, or consider, I should say, the purchase of the vehicles for animal control. That's the one area that we get the most calls on. Those vehicles are on the road every day. you know, and they're the ones that we're spending a lot of money on right now. And so if there's anything that we can do to move that forward, it would be a benefit for the entire county, because we do animal services for just about everybody in Putnam County.
Okay, so let me clean this up. So animal control needs 4 vehicle replacements and equipment, and we think we can bring that in for $175,000 today off the lot. Okay, board, let me ask you,
All 4 of them got to be done, or just the truck?
well,
Didn't he just say he just needed the truck?
I think he just
He
needs
needs the boxes, or else where they
all
put
of
the
it
animals.
right now.
Yeah, they're all an aging fleet. It's 3 dog box trucks and 1 of the other.
And we're gonna put those out the surplus to gain some money back
Yes.
on those, okay?
Yeah.
Them the ones with the air conditioners in them?
No,
If you want them.
we're putting holes in them.
AC's out.
Yeah.
What's the 4th truck? I apologize. There's 3 with the boxes.
3 boxes, any other animal control vehicle that's out there now needs to be replaced. I think it's got 248,000.
That's just a regular truck?
That they use.
So
every
why don't
day.
we do the 3 with the boxes in this, and the 1 goes to the lease?
Would that be,
That'd
okay?
be, I'm gonna make that suggestion, that'd be
Okay,
okay.
so do 3 now with the boxes, and then we'll hold off on the 1. Okay, so let me clean.
I want to make one quick thing on I want to ask a question about the refurbishments. Would it possibly give JR more flexibility if we put a pool of money towards station refurbishment as general of $350,000? And that way, if Pomona Park came in at 2, he potentially would have more leeway to do West Putnam to make it a little bit more generic than that. Is that allowable, or is?
Everything, we can do whatever we want. So what you want to do is put,
Julianne, would
America.
that be allowable?
well,
If we did a pool of $350,000 for
Okay.
station refurbishment
okay,
for
here's,
West Putnam and Pomona Park, and/or Pomona Park, and that way, if he does it and he comes up with 250 or 200 for Pomona Park, he can have a little more flexibility than coming to us and having us go.
basically, we just combine Pomona Park beside West Putnam and add 350,000, and then that gives 2 stations at 350,000.
Provided that's the agreement, then yes, we can budget it that way, and we can do budget transfers from one line to another.
Well, let's just throw it all in one pot for refurbishment, West Putnam / Pomona Park, $350,000.
I think that might give you more flexibility.
I agree. The only thing is, I know that it's been tossed around here a bunch of vehicles, but the ambulance haven't been voted on yet
We're
either.
not talking about them.
So
They're
it's-
in green,
They
so.
were already done. All
Okay.
that's
They
done.
took all that out. Anything in green's not included, didn't
Yeah.
you say that, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, I apologize. I just knew that we were talking about vehicles.
Those are
Wait, is
ARPA.
that what, I missed that.
No, what we said was those were going to be ARPA funds right there being used for that. We're going to dedicate ARPA funds for that in the green.
Well, we didn't vote for that, but we talked.
I know, but that's
How
what
much is that?
well, that's what I brought up.
600-some thousand.
That's what I tried to clean up a minute ago.
I understand it, but I'm trying to understand, sir. I mean, I'm not trying to
Total
get
ARPA
you-
dollars in
trying
the
to
general
understand.
fund right now is 1.2.
Okay.
Everything in the green lines is $1.2 million.
1.262000.
So if we say right now, we're gonna put everything in the green line and use ARPA money for it, that would take 1.26 of, well, thereabouts of,
7.2.
Yes, again,
7.2
contingent
million.
upon final eligibility being vetted through ARPA. That is correct.
Right. Leaves you with $5.6 million.
3 of it needs to go to communication, which will give us,
Now that's all the highlighted in green.
Green,
No
yes,
matter
sir, and
what-
it's,
No matter what area or department it's in. That's not just JR's.
yes, sir, that's correct. So of that, there's ambulance and equipments, HVAC system, IT infrastructure, and there's a very small part of the project for Parks and Recreation. That is in addition to the ARPA request. So that does not take a substitution of what is already requested in ARPA for Parks and Recreation. So just so that you understand.
Okay.
Although if we got the ARPA, we may combine those two, but long story short, yes.
So,
I thought we wanted to include IT in this. I thought that's what we discussed earlier.
The IT projects are ARPA. We believe they have been deemed ARPA eligible. They are part of our IT infrastructure security.
I don't think we're all saying the same thing,
Don't
so
either.
let me just see if I
Getting
understand.
confused.
What we're doing here is we're we're putting a EMS refurbishment period line on there for 350. Correct?
Yes, that's what I heard.
Okay. And then the sign went away. Anything that's marked in green on this sheet, we're gonna vote to use to pledge ARPA money. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Chairman?
That's correct.
Okay, so anything that's in green on this sheet, we're gonna vote to use ARPA money as part of this motion, correct?
Y'all tell me
If
so.
it makes through the cut of, if it,
I would make a
If it
separate
can be
motion.
used
If it
for
can be
ARPA
used,
money.
correct.
Okay. So,
I think that needs to be a separate motion from the overall motion.
but don't forget your
but
3
it's
vehicles.
part of it now, huh?
Don't forget your 3 vehicles on animal control and the boxes. They wanted 4, that's on the, for this page over here. They wanted 4, and we're gonna give them 3 with the, okay? So 3 vehicles plus equipment, and we're gonna postpone 1 vehicle purchase to see if we can do something better.
Okay, I don't really know how to make this motion, but I'll take a stab at
I
it.
would do the ARPA one separately. If
You wanna make the motion? Go ahead, cause it was my motion.
I make a motion to cover all things in green with ARPA funds.
Okay, we have proper motion by Commissioner Adamsack. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a second by Commissioner Turner. Any further discussion on the items listed in green, moving those to ARPA funding if we vet those and they turn out to be acceptable? Okay. There's no sense-
For discussion.
No,
Right,
charade,
I
you're just
don't-
gonna have
just
to.
Yeah, yeah.
holler at me.
Okay, so for discussion, I don't support some of these things for ARPA, but I think given I wanted to just make the motion for discussion. I believe the IT and the HVAC units and all of the park stuff should not be used for ARPA, because I think there's other things that I think should be a priority, and we should listen to the community for that. I am all for the ambulances coming out of ARPA.
Mr. Pickens, do you have your light on, or is it just blinking crazily?
Before this meeting's over, I'm gonna make the damn motion that we get this stuff fixed up here. This stuff
That is not on the capital plan, sir.
This is, well, we
Fixing
need,
it.
we need to
That's
get,
IT, they won't fix anything.
we need to
Not for
get it
you,
on.
they
the-
won't.
So in Parks and Rec, to take up them for a little bit, is that the request was for $300,000 for lighting. So, so if we, because this will only upgrade maybe one field.
That's correct.
Probably.
No, of ARPA funding, we have, I believe, 1.7 million in Parks and Recreation request, and that is Flora Home, John Theobald, and South Putnam. In order to do, basically $100,000 in LED lighting gives you 1 sports field, 1. So of John Theobald, you have 6 sports fields there.
Okay. If we approve this, are the
Which
JRs
field?
Huh?
Which field?
Yeah, that's the thing, which field, but anyway, so with JR's
So
fire
there-
engines, it would take care of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm 100% for that.
Ambulances.
Ambulance.
Ambulances.
I'm sorry.
So some of the other things, I thought we were gonna go and listen to the public to see, and then come back. Do we have to make a decision on all these right now?
I don't think so.
We're just trying to get the capital improvement plan passed, is all we're trying to do, where Julie can do her budget. That's
So
all
if
we're
it's included in ARPA, it would not be included in the general fund capital improvement plan.
Yeah, but there's nothing that says anything on this list has to be included, right, or wrong?
So I guess I'll withdraw my motion, and the reason why is because I think based on what you just said, we don't need to do this. We can still approve his ambulances once we find out more. We can still approve these other things once we find more about getting to the community and what we want to do with ARPA when we take in all contributing factors. So I think we go with what Commissioner Turner was saying initially and just leave everything green off for now. I think I'd like
I think
that
I said
alternative.
that,
No, that's not what he.
Yeah, well,
but yeah,
I'm not for my motion the way that I made it,
okay.
so I withdraw it. I apologize. But listening to this, I agree with Commissioner Pickens. I think we need a little more conversation on some of this.
Well, I think we do need conversation, but at the same time, we're moving capital purchases that would have come out of general fund reserves to another funding source that I don't think the community is going to have a hard time at all understanding ambulances and cardiac monitors, stretchers, radios, and computers. That's just serving our community. The air conditioning units help our employees breathe a lot cleaner air. I think that's an easy lift right there, and the Wi-Fi upgrades and all, that's badly needed. And when we talk about parks, you know, one thing in the ARPA funding is to get people out of their house and to a place where they can enjoy, and if they can't enjoy time at night, because we're fixing to get in the dark here pretty soon. So I don't have a problem telling the community we've got, and if we want to put more money to communications, we're still going to have money left to listen to the community, so it's up to y'all. But we need to move forward, so the chair will entertain a motion since the other one was withdrawn.
Don't look at me, Mr. Chairman. I've tried 3 times to make a damn motion, and I can't get nobody to decide what they want to do, so let somebody else take a stab at it.
I don't remember 3 times, but
I don't remember 3 times either.
may hit you with a gavel. I swear.
Try it one more time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's have a discussion here for just a second then, before we get there if possible. Okay? Y'all not wanna, a lot of the things that are on this list here today, I've got heartburn with, but it took the heartburn away from me if we were gonna use ARPA money on it. Well, if we're not gonna use ARPA money on it, then we got to basically start over again, because there's a lot of things on here I'm not voting for, just not doing it. So, the ARPA money, we were talking about spending 1.2 million of the first 7 million, and we can't do that without having 5 meetings all over the county. Y'all are losing me in this deal. I believe in transparency, and I believe in meetings, but it's not like we're not saving a big portion of it. We're just trying to get the ball rolling. So let's wait till February and not worry about it at all. And if we wait another year or 2, let's just lose it all and not do anything at all. I just get tired of just the government, not you guys, but I just get tired of frustrated at the government. We just sit on our hands all the time. We're not wanting to spend all the money. Just make some kind of a commitment, any kind of a commitment. Hell, make a bad commitment, any commitment.
Well, you know how I feel, so you don't have to worry.
Well, I'm with you, you know, but that's fine. I know that we've got to move this forward today. We've got to have a balanced budget, and the capital plan is part of the balanced budget. So, you know, everything, we didn't vote the stuff in green. I think Commissioner Adamsack made a shot at that and then took his motion away. So I'm gonna do it again, y'all can second it or not. The stuff that was in green, I move that we use ARPA money for it.
Proper motion by Commissioner Turner with the items listed in green will be moved to the ARPA funding requirement. We have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
A proper second by Commissioner Pickens. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Wasn't that the same exact motion you made?
Mr. Turner,
I
let's,
didn't want to be the one that made it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just get frustrated
go.
over
Let's
the
finish up.
silliness of it all. Okay, so we took the 42 out and we funded it with different money
Right.
for the EOC sign, and we took all the vehicles out of it until we decide if we're gonna lease them, except for
three.
the 3 that were for animal control.
With the equipment on it.
With the equipment on it.
Right.
Okay, so we're good. You understand? You got me, Julie?
Do we need to know the amount of that 4th vehicle? Because it's probably less without the equipment, correct?
I have a breakdown of the vehicle and the boxes, so I'm okay on my side.
Okay, so that's what we want to do. So we we took the EMS stations and we made them one line item for $350. Is that what you guys wanted?
Correct.
Sir.
So it's one line, instead of a West Putnam and a Pomona Park, we have one EMS refurbishment for $350. Let's see, the lights went under the other motion.
Everything else is done, yes.
Okay, I need one more question, and then, the 4 AC units, they went under
They went under ARPA.
They went under ARPA.
Correct.
If something happens that ARPA don't pay for them, that needs to come back to us before it just gets spent, which would be any other line item on the ARPA we just passed, correct?
Correct. They're gonna vet ARPA to make sure the funding's
One of
there.
the things we just said we'd spend ARPA on, I'm looking at Julie, Mr. Chairman. If one of the things we just decided to spend ARPA on turns out we can't use ARPA, then it would come back for funding at that time, correct?
That's correct, and that goes for any of those items in green.
Okay, so are you clear what I just said?
Absolutely.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the other items, all the other items will be funded. The 3 vehicles from animal control, 3 BOCC, and the equipment, and we're gonna hold off on the other vehicle replacements in all the other departments. And there's no other changes there, so we have a proper motion by Commissioner Turner. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Mr. Pickens, seconds for discussion.
All right, would you
Mr.
say
Pickens,
all
you have the
other
floor.
items, these items in fleet maintenance, the drive-on lifts are being funded?
Correct.
With the exception of the vehicle replacement.
Right. The mower and the
Yes.
trailer and stuff, all that
All
for
that's gonna,
Parks and Recs?
Yes.
okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? The ayes have it. All right, Julianne, Miss Julianne, is there anything else on the?
No, sir.
We're done with that. Okay, guys, I want to bring up one more thing. You knew I would. I want to talk to you about the health insurance funding for our employees. I'm going to ask you to reconsider and look at the $110,000 for our employees. If you don't want to do that out of general fund, I will ask you that you look at my second option here. My second option is employees have been charged the 1% insurance fee. We'll have the option to earn it back through wellness appointments. Example, employee can earn 1% back by going to different things like wellness visits, blood work, consultation, whatever. There might be a litany of items, but with that, they have the opportunity to earn their 1% back and also keep our health insurance in play. So I want to ask you if you would think about that, and can we have a really quick discussion on that? Mr. Adams-Ack.
I'm all for incentivizing health, whether it's use of the call-in, whether it's these proactive appointments. I'm not for it offsetting the 1.2%. I would be for it if you said per activity there was a dollar amount to it, like maybe you gave someone a $100 gift card or something like that, or if there's a way to do that. As far as offsetting the 1.2%, I can't get there.
Mr. Turner?
You can talk about.
Mr. Chairman, I understand where you're coming from, I really do. But I think everybody needs to understand the county had $2.8 million thereabouts in health care increases. We asked the employees to pay $280,000 of that, very little of it. And we asked the BOCC employees to pay even a smaller part of that. And so basically it's 1%, 1.2%. I don't see how it could be deemed possibly as unfair. If the fund does real well next year, then we'll get to drop rates more. It may be that it comes down some next year. I'll knock on wood if I could hear some under here. But I just don't think it's sustainable for the county to pay all of it moving forward. We paid 100% of one year, which is $1.4 million thereabouts, and we paid all but $200 and something thousand of the second year. I just fail to see how that could be deemed that it's not fair.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Pickens?
I thought that this was just for 1 year, correct? That we had to take care of 2 years, so we had to take care of this year and the
Yeah,
80%
we
funding for
voted to
next
pay
year.
it all the first year as a separate motion.
Exactly, but I think that also with a new HR director, they were gonna look into some of these things you talked about it, and the incentives to, and I did take the poll today, about
That's first,
what would get you, involved into just a healthier, lifestyle and trying to go to the screenings and those type things. So I thought we were gonna work forward to that. So I hate it. I hated to have to vote that way, but I think it's a way that I think that's what we had to do.
Yeah. Mr. Adams?
Yeah, and again, at this point, the 1.2% is a one-time thing, and I think that our goal with the getting people needs to be forever thing. So the other, I think you're mixing two things that don't align. I think the one is one-time expense, and that we're sharing with the employees, and the other one is something that we need to do forever for the employees.
Well, I just wanted to say, some constitutionals already figured in their budget and a raise and an increase in premium. And I think our employees, but Mr. Hamzat, we will go back to the drawing board and look at wellness fees added to that and bring something back to you at a later date. Mr. Turner?
I'm not very good at saying things and not being blunt about it. But if the constitutionals decide to pick that up on their own, there's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
I still think what we've done is the fair and the right thing to do, but it absolutely perplexes me to no end to where they come in here, the constitutionals, and ask for more money, and they can't give raises to their employees unless we pay all the health insurance, and they can't make these marks. We can open up new departments and new whatever. We can cover all these other expenses, and we can also cover this health insurance for our employees that you don't cover. But we need more money. I don't think that's fair on their part, but whatever. I'm willing to stand by where I voted, which is, I think, the fairest option for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Adams?
I need to be clear, just like it was the day we voted for this, I consider this apples and oranges for the constitutionals. I do feel like we shorted them on their budgets, but that's separate from this particular action, in my opinion. So I just want to be clear on that.
All right, let me remind you that this coming Saturday is our ceremony, our 9/11 ceremony out front. Please, if you can, be here at 9:45, and we'll split up the resolution to read like we have done in the past. And also, if you look at your calendars, Monday, September 13th at 11 a.m., we're going to have our kickoff of our redistricting conversation with our consultant that we hired. He'll be here at 11, and we'll go till about 12:30, take a lunch, and come back if necessary at that time. If there's no further business, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.